Welcome back to the channel. I hope you'll enjoy these compiled videos from chapters 21 to 40 of How a Former Pro Takes Advantage by Doing an Easy Job. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. As the king watches in awe that Prince Arel, who is incapable of martial arts, is now holding onto a sword he gifted, he contemplates a thought, but before he can finish, Arel's grip on the sword falters. The mighty weapon overpowered him, causing him to tumble to the ground. Shrieks of concern echoed throughout the room. Lying on the floor, Arel bitterly reflected that he'd said it before. He didn't want to die by a sword. To the world, Arel was already exceptional in many areas. If he also mastered swordsmanship, he feared he'd be dragged into the kingdom's power struggles. He had gone to great lengths to maintain his image as the weaker younger brother, even while training in secret. He couldn't let his efforts go to waste. Most importantly, he had to decide how much he wanted to involve himself in these conflicts. As Arel regained his footing, he thanked the king for such an extraordinary gift. However, he confessed that his swordsmanship skills were still in their infancy. He suggested that his sister, Kania, was more deserving of such a sword. This revelation left Princess Kania in shock. Arel wondered why she was suddenly surprised. Kania was progressing at an astonishing rate, and had already reached the rank of an aura practitioner. This achievement alone was enough to earn her elite status in the kingdom. Although he, as a pro, understood that Kania had a long way to go, he believed it was only a matter of time before she reached the level of an aura expert, a rank held by only 30 people in the kingdom. This fact would leave every knight in awe. Therefore, he believed she was the rightful owner of the sword. With that, Prince Arel handed the sword to Princess Kania. Witnessing this exchange, the king steps forward with a mischievous glint in his eyes. He expresses understanding of Prince Arel's sentiment, but insists there must be a condition. He challenges Kania to prove her swordsmanship and whether it is worthy of such a weapon. Taken aback by the king's request, Kania wears a look of shock, mirroring Arel's dumbfounded expression. What on earth is the king thinking? Arel wonders, quickly realizing that his father's macho tendencies are at play. The king prompts Kania to demonstrate her sword skills by taking a swing at him, reassuring her that she has nothing to fear. Kania, though flustered, tentatively agrees. Arel observes her state, understanding it to be a natural reaction. He gives her a supportive pat on the back, encouraging her to seize this opportunity to showcase her progress. Inwardly, he hopes Kania will give the muscle-obsessed king a run for his money, even going so far as to flash 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. With Prince Arel's backing, Princess Kania musters the fighting spirit to accept the king's challenge. As Princess Kania and the king face off, swords drawn, and stances prepared, the room fills with suspense. The king, with a fierce gaze, observes that Kania's stance differs from that of the kingdom's knights and inquires if it's her own creation. Arel, watching from the sidelines, marvels at how the king could discern Kania's uniqueness from her stance alone. With newfound determination, Kania raises her sword, ready to spar with the king. As she prepares herself, she calls out, "Please guide me, father!" Princess Kania initiates the attack, channeling mana into her body and sword, creating a potent gust of wind. Lady Livana, startled by the unexpected display, shields herself, while Prince Arel watches with a pleased grin. He thinks to himself, noting that Kania's exceptional strength and high mana output has granted her a speed invisible to the untrained eye. As Kania charges toward the king, Arel wears a worried look, questioning the normalcy of aiming for someone's head for a first attack. The king's joyous expression, as the sword nears his face, prompts Arel to wonder if there's something inherently terrifying about this father-daughter pair. Just then, their swords meet with a resounding clash, and an immense wave of energy radiates from the point of impact. Kania, surprised by the sudden counterattack, realizes only at the last second that the king has raised his sword. The king praises her, acknowledging the weight behind her attack as she is sent sprawling on the floor. He reveals that not even the leader of the knights could summon that much aura in a duel, expressing his delight at Canya's ability. As Canya picks herself up from the floor, nursing her arm from the recoil of the attack, she humbly admits she still has much to learn. The king then turns his attention to Arel, asking if he was indeed the one who trained Canya. Arel, with a pleased grin, confirms that it was indeed him. He downplays his involvement, attributing her progress to the success of his theoretical approach. He explains that traditional swordsmanship didn't suit Canya, but she showed a natural affinity for aura. He merely offered her some guidance. Upon hearing this, the king asks if it's possible to teach this method to others. Arel, realizing the king's ulterior motive, is slightly annoyed. He suspects the king envisions an army of aura expert knights, unmatched by any other country. However, Arel believes this isn't feasible. Respectfully, Prince Arel declines the king theory, explaining that it would be challenging to replicate Canya's results. Her innate potential, and the time they spent together from a young age, allowed him to analyze and tailor training to her every move, which contributed to her rapid growth. Thus, he suggests that mass production of aura experts might not be achievable. The king sighs, seemingly conceding defeat, while Prince Arel contemplates his next move. Although he could, in theory, devise a training plan to suit the knights just by observing them, but he quickly dismisses the idea. The thought of spending his days studying sweaty muscles is far from appealing, not to mention the sheer amount of work involved. Still, he doesn't want to leave the king completely without hope. He reassures the king that it might be possible to improve the knight's abilities, if not promote rapid growth, by providing them with appropriate training methods. However, he specifies that this offer is only for members of the royal family. Understanding the implications, the king agrees, recognizing the benefits this might bring to his lineage. Arel is pleased to see the king's understanding, since there's no need to strengthen the other nobles, who are like hyenas to the king and could potentially cause more trouble. The king firmly agrees to Arel's conditions, promising to share the secret method only within the royal family, and with that Prince Arel can't help but smile at the thought of his training technique being passed down through generations of royalty. It's as if his personal diary is becoming a national treasure. His humble smile soon morphs into a greedy grin. He knows the knights will have to endure intense training for this transformation, but they will need to persevere. Several months later, a loud crash echoes through the palace corridors, startling passing maids. Inside a training room, the king stands amidst the rubble and dust, drenched in sweat. He wipes his sweat and reflects on his progress. He's finally reaching the level of a peak expert. The training method, surprised by the fact it is coming from Arel, who can't use it due to his frail body, is working. In fact, the king muses, it is Arel who needs this training method more than anyone. Resolved, the king decides to take action to provide Prince Arel with some help. Meanwhile, in the garden of the concubine's castle, Prince Arel is contentedly munching on a plateful of cookies, while Princess Canya sips her tea. Just then, they learn an exclusive knight is coming. The servant reaffirms that these would indeed be Arel's personal, exclusive knights as he places a stack of applications on the table, noting that many talented knights, personally selected by the king himself, have volunteered for the role. Arel, a cookie in hand, peruses the documents, noting that these are children from prestigious households, who, a few years prior, wouldn't have given him the time of day. With a self-satisfied smirk, he leans back in his chair, popping another cookie into his mouth. It was only natural, he muses, that he'd gained such attention now that he's found success. However, he knows that he doesn't need guards, since his skills are unrivaled. As he continues munching, he considers his future. He has no plans to flaunt his abilities, especially after the previous incident where Canya's life was endangered. Picking up a few applications, Arel questions the servant about whether it's true that he could have a maximum of 3 exclusive knights. The servant replies with gleeful enthusiasm that the king mentioned he could have as many knights as he wanted. Arel, slightly taken aback, assures him that he doesn't need quite that many. He resumes browsing the applications, finding the role of an interviewer rather agreeable. He resolves to consider all relevant factors, skills, personalities, and so on to make a fair decision. As he delves deeper into his decision-making process, he begins to mumble to himself, contemplating his preferences. He doesn't want someone overly muscular, he muses, but rather a more feminine figure. Essentially, he wants eye candy. As Arel's thoughts wander, those around him exchange confused glances, wondering what's happening. Suddenly, Arel produces a pair of glasses from seemingly nowhere, positions them on his face, and brandishes a quill with a flourish. With a dramatic declaration, he announces the commencement of the interviews. Several weeks later, the knights assembled for the interviews, and we see Prince Arel breaking into a cold sweat, surveying the array of candidates he's selected. As he nervously greets them, their unified response overwhelms him. "Greetings, Your Highness!" To his dismay, the female candidates, despite their outstanding knightly qualifications, are far more muscular than he had envisioned, causing his utopian dream to shatter. Just then, one of the knights notices his discomfort and inquires about his well-being. Arel assures them he's fine, despite his internal turmoil. Feeling somewhat defeated, Arel reminds himself that he can't express his dissatisfaction. After all, these knights are exceptional, having trained ceaselessly. He needs to put his personal preferences aside, so with renewed resolve, he announces the start of the interviews. As each knight explains their motivation for volunteering, Arel can't help but be taken aback by their strength, particularly one muscular woman whose presence rivals that of a wild berserker. He realizes that if he chose her, his safety would be guaranteed. Another knight, emanating an aura of noble grace, stands out among the rest due to her distinct demeanor. The interviews progress smoothly, with each candidate answering Arel's questions without difficulty. He asks them to wait outside while he deliberates. With the knights out of the room, Arel acknowledges that, despite this being a formality, he can't conclude the process without selecting someone. So he begins his preparations. Drawing mana from the air, Arel activates the Origin Creation Qigong technique, the 6 divine abilities. This secret technique stimulates his brain to access abilities that are normally dormant. It's an ability typically attained by a Taoist immortal who has undergone extensive training, but for a former pro like Arel, it's as easy as a walk in the park. Invigorated by his newfound clairvoyance, Prince Arel proceeds with the second stage of the interviews. Each knight is called in one by one, and through his enhanced perception, Arel can discern their true intentions. As each candidate steps into the room, he sees right through them, subsequently dismissing one after another. With his all-seeing ability, Arel can perceive the true essence of the knights' minds and emotions. He can't hear their hearts, but he can see the color of their souls. Though he doubts any of the knights are assassins, the possibility of spies is not lost on him. Hence, he knows he must choose carefully. Suddenly, the next knight enters, and Arel is struck by the clarity and brilliance of her soul. The knight introduces herself as Asha Pernil, an undeniably talented knight, but her background appears humble, leading Arel to suspect there might be more to her story. Excited, he notes that he may have found a diamond in the rough and decides that, as long as her secret doesn't affect him, she could be a good choice. Other than Asha, no other knight has caught Arel's attention so far. He knows he should pick at least 2, and his mind briefly flits back to the berserker woman. Just as he's contemplating, the final knight, Sena Girl, introduces herself. She is a cheerful and carefree girl with a clear soul as well, and Arel notices that she seems very sociable. Her record shows that she has served in various knight orders across the kingdom, from the border to distant fiefdoms. When asked, Sena admits she has personal reasons for her extensive travels. Arel wonders if she's a problem child, but as he studies her, he doesn't notice any significant changes in her emotional color. It doesn't seem like she has committed any crimes. And with that, the interview concludes, and Prince Arel announces the successful candidates, Asha and Sena. With their addition, the total number of inhabitants of the concubine castle increases. Prince Arel quickly observes that Sena, despite her light-hearted demeanor during the interview, is quite serious when it comes to her duties. On the other hand, Asha behaves exactly as he expected. Wanting to evaluate their skills, Prince Arel brings the two new knights to a remote area. Both are surprised when he explains that he'd like to see their abilities firsthand. Arel knows that even though they are his knights in name only, it would be a problem if they remained aura practitioners. Hence, he needs to chart their skills and help them grow stronger. Asha agrees to demonstrate her abilities, but wonders how they should proceed. With childlike innocence, Prince Arel suggests they fight each other. Sena and Asha agree to spar on their first day, seeing no harm in the idea. However, in Arel's mind, he can't wait to witness a clash between two individuals of similar skills, showcasing their strengths without any reservation. Giggling about his ingenious plan, Arel playfully asks his knights who among them is the stronger one. This sparks their competitive spirit, and sensing an opportunity, Sena glances over at Asha and confesses she's curious about who is the more skilled knight. With the tension between them ignited, Prince Arel, donning 3D glasses, eagerly awaits the upcoming duel between these two prideful knights. In his excitement, he wishes he had popcorn to accompany what is sure to be an entertaining fight. As Asha and Sena limber up in preparation for their sparring match, they turn to Prince Arel for guidance on whether there should be any rules. But as he nonchalantly munches on popcorn, he advises them that their main focus should be to avoid getting hurt. As both knights unleash their auras, Sena taunts Asha, saying she'll go easy on her since Prince Arel insisted they be careful, and starts boasting about her practical experience. Asha responds confidently, assuring Sena that she doesn't need to hold back since she's confident in her own skills. The atmosphere between the two knights grows heavy, and it seems as though they might seriously fight instead of just sparring. Prince Arel reminds them not to take it too far, and says the fight will start when he claps his hands. But before he can give the signal, the knights clash with each other, causing Prince Arel's seat to be thrown off the arena. Picking himself up and looking disheveled, Prince Arel thinks he did tell them to take it easy. However, he understands their desire to show off their strength. As the fight takes off, Prince Arel observes the duel keenly and begins to analyze their skills, noting that their bodies are already in excellent condition. Asha executes a mighty spear thrust, a move that could leave Sena vulnerable if mishandled. Sena, however, stands resolute, and Prince Arel observes that she activated her aura within her eyes, allowing her to skillfully dodge the attack and counter the spear's path. Arel notes that she relied on her sight rather than her senses to predict the attack, likening her instincts to a wild beast's. After dodging, Sena spots a window of opportunity to land a powerful punch on Asha's torso. Arel acknowledges the inherent drawback of spears, the wielder's vulnerability when an adversary closes in, and wonders how Asha will respond. To his astonishment, Asha delivers a swift kick that sends Sena skirting backward. Sena teases Asha for incorporating a kick into her spear work, but Asha dismisses the jab, asserting that there's no rule forbidding it. As Arel spectates their intense combat, he takes note of their escalating aura of power, suspecting that their competitive spirit won't allow them to cease until blood is drawn. Deciding to intervene, Arel halts the match and approaches the knights, expressing his grasp of their abilities and pointing out their areas for improvement. This leaves Asha and Sena puzzled. Arel elaborates, saying that Asha's focus on speed makes her impatient, while Sena's reliance on close combat seems timid. Asha interjects, realizing that Arel was the one who guided the second princess, Kanya. She deduces that their display was to receive similar guidance. Arel, surprised by Kanya being mentioned, considers that Kanya must have gained prestige after becoming an aura expert. He confirms Asha's suspicion, asserting that as his guards, they need to become stronger. He inquires if they feel otherwise, to which both Asha and Sena bashfully admit that they don't want to be a burden to him. Arel responds nonchalantly, arguing that he won't lose anything by guiding his own guards. He then promptly initiates Arel's exclusive night special training plan. Sena remarks that their current location seems a bit cramped for training, but Prince Arel assures her that they aren't there for physical training. Instead, he plans to provide lectures on theoretical aspects. He suddenly pulls out a secret manual titled, Introduction to Anyone Can Become a Knight, a pioneering guide that he plans to sell to other knights if it proves effective. However, after a few hours, both Sena and Asha are left bewildered. Asha struggles to grasp the concept of circulating mana throughout her body to enhance her aura, while Sena finds the entire material incomprehensible. This feedback leads Arel to conclude that his guide isn't ready for public consumption yet. Regardless, Arel didn't expect the two knights to comprehend the complex material right away, so he begins his lecture. He explains that the amount of mana a person can store varies, because the knight's mana paths are currently blocked. He warns them that recklessly exerting their strength to emit aura is akin to drawing water from a barrel with a fire hose. Not only is it incredibly wasteful but also perilous. If they forcefully open their circulation paths without proper control, disastrous consequences could occur. He dramatically slams the board and warns them of falling into a state of chi deviation, which he simplifies as becoming half a corpse, causing both knights to tremble with fear. To quell their worries, Arel counsels them on the importance of learning to naturally assimilate and retain significant quantities of aura within their bodies. He highlights the need to do this in their daily routines, emphasizing the efficient circulation of this stored energy. Arel guarantees that mastering this technique will revolutionize their use of aura. This explanation seems to resonate with Sena and Asha, as they nod with understanding. With that, Prince Arel proceeds to the next topic, tailoring the theory and class to suit each of his knight's unique strengths. Arel's Special Training Plan Chapter 2. Prince Arel begins with Sena, advising her to focus more on her aura manipulation. Sena retorts, claiming her current aura usage is satisfactory, prompting Arel to challenge her to concentrate her aura on her other arm and both legs simultaneously. Struggling with the task, Sena demonstrates her limitation. She can only concentrate her aura in one place at a time. It's not that she can't envelop her entire body with aura, it's just that she instinctively directs it to areas of immediate need, leading to rapid aura depletion. Exhausted and frustrated, Sena collapses, admitting her inability to maintain simultaneous aura flow while keeping her senses alert. Seeing her struggle, Prince Arel decides to intervene. He approaches Sena and holds her hands, explaining that focusing on the difference in body temperature could help her concentrate her senses on her palms, a trick to help her control her aura better. Gradually, Sena begins to sense the aura flow, and to Prince Arel's delight, a vibrant red aura illuminates both her hands. Sena, grateful for his guidance, compliments the prince on his soft hands, clasping them eagerly like a famished bear. Caught off guard by her behavior, Prince Arel gently reprimands her, insisting she focuses on the training. After some time, Sena masters the technique, her face glowing with the thrill of her newfound skill. However, Prince Arel senses something amiss and briefly wonders if he might have made an error in his teaching. Yet, he dismisses his doubts, satisfied with the results of the training session. Arel's Special Training Plan Chapter 3. Next in line for training is Asha. Prince Arel notes her impatience during the previous sparring match. He criticizes her decision to kick Sena blindly, expecting her to respond with a hand-to-hand combat technique, despite Sena being more proficient in that area. He emphasizes that calmness is paramount in spearmanship, and she must rid herself of impatience. Questioning the method of her training, Asha asks if carrying Prince Arel on her back is meant to instill patience. Confirming her guess, he instructs her to concentrate until the burden of his weight dissipates, urging her to remain calm and focused. Feeling somewhat defeated, Asha acquiesces to his method. In another castle, far removed from the training grounds, we see the queen in contemplation. She reviews a note delivered by a mysterious figure, her eyes scanning the message, which speaks of Prince Arel's latest ventures. Initially, she dismissed him as inconsequential as a gnat's offspring, but his actions have begun to pique her attention. With a flicker of annoyance, she feeds the note to the dancing flames of a nearby candle, watching as the paper chars and crumbles in her grasp. A realization washes over her, a resolute decision hardening in her eyes. She must address the issue of Prince Arel herself. Within the verdant expanse of the concubine's castle forest, Asha relentlessly presses on with her training. Demonstrating her newfound might, she sends a tree splintering apart with one swift move. Under Prince Arel's guidance, she feels her strength surging. Despite the intensity of the training, she contemplates whether she's truly worthy of the prince's focused guidance. The story then delves into Asha Purnell's past, revealing her origins as a noble from the now-defunct Purnell family. The Purnells, while not particularly wealthy, led a peaceful existence in the rural outskirts, a tranquility that was shattered when famine, brought on by monstrous invasions, laid waste to their world. As their home succumbed to flames and devastation, Asha recalls the heroic sacrifice of her father when he barricaded the door against the monster onslaught, urging his family to escape, entrusting young Asha with the future of their family, a responsibility that still weighs heavily on her. Time marched on, and the noble families that once shared cordial relations with the Purnells turned their backs on Asha. Left with no other choice, she enlisted herself in the ranks of the knights to sustain herself. Her innate martial prowess allowed her to awaken her aura swiftly, leading to her placement in the royal capital within the 15th Knight Order. This was the kingdom's lowest-ranked order, a motley crew of the least respected knights. The worst among them was their leader, an indolent, underachieving knight commander who had only achieved his rank due to his connections. Despite his age, he was merely an aura beginner. A sudden glimpse into an unsettling encounter between Asha and the knight commander unfolds, and his unwelcome advances, under the pretense of offering her special training and drawing eerie parallels between her and his daughter, left a sour taste in her mouth. Frustrated, she channels her anger into another powerful strike, crushing yet another tree. Feeling a sense of relief, Asha contemplates how satisfying it would be to vent her anger on the knight commander the next time they cross paths. She reflects on her initial desperation that led her to apply for the position of a guard, never imagining she would be accepted so readily. With this new opportunity, she could improve her family's living conditions. She just needed to save a little more to afford her brother's academy fees. As she considers all the good fortune that's come her way recently, she can't help but attribute it to Prince Arel. She makes a mental vow to repay his kindness, no matter what it takes. At the same time, we explore Sena's reasons for deciding to serve as a guard. Waking up at the crack of dawn, a servant commends her early rising habit. She modestly attributes this to her still getting used to her new responsibilities, ending the conversation on a positive note by thanking the servant and wishing him a pleasant day. Sena Geralt's roots are in a family of mercenaries. Growing up in a tribe that served no single country, they were wanderers, constantly on the move. One day, her father reveals to her that their way of life is changing. The last war with the Empire, 30 years prior, brought a period of peace that reduced their income, and he feared that mercenaries like them would soon have no role to play. He urges her to go out into the world, promising to handle the stubborn old men who cling to their mercenary ways, and believing it's time for the younger generation to forge a new path. The prospect of leaving her tribe didn't bother Sena, and she found the knight training quite within her capabilities. Yet she was caught off guard by the sudden and tragic end to her father's feud with a corrupt lord, as he met his untimely demise, naively believing he could reform entrenched traditions. The memory of a past incident with another knight, strikingly reminiscent of her naive father, invades her thoughts. In this memory, Sena courageously confronted the knight for unjustly labeling innocent villagers as bandits, probing his moral integrity, which caused her to beat him half to death. Upon reflection on this past episode, she realizes she is devoid of regret. Instead, a profound wave of relief engulfs her. Since then, Sena has found herself frequently assigned to perilous regions. Eventually, she chose to volunteer as an escort knight for Prince Arel. Despite the hardships she faced, she feels oddly fortunate about her new role. Prince Arel, albeit appearing idle at times, struck her as humble and unexpectedly charming. His hands, soft to the touch, stirred an unusual warmth within her. This feeling was new to her, and she treasured the kindness she had received from the prince, making a firm resolution to repay it somehow. With their respective resolutions firmly in place, Asha and Sena make their way back to Prince Arel or Nija. The prince might not shine in the realm of martial arts or magic, but he's demonstrated prodigious intellectual prowess. His innovative creations have significantly bolstered the kingdom's economy, and his theories have assisted the second princess in rapidly ascending to the status of an aura expert. These achievements have rightfully earned him the moniker, the Great Grey Sage. Elsewhere, the 13-year-old prince, Arel, is seen luxuriating under a canopy, delighting in his refreshing ade, and celebrating his successful recent months of laziness. Within the castle's regal walls, the king is in a council with his retainers. They broach the subject of the upcoming 14th birthday and the coming-of-age ceremony of the third prince, Arel or Nija. Count Tempest, the first to voice his thoughts, suggests that the ceremony might provide an excellent opportunity for the multi-talented prince. The king echoes the term opportunity with an air of doubt and listens as the retainers ponder the availability of suitable estates to bestow upon Prince Arel. The king questions if their intent is to assign Arel his own territory. To his surprise, they unanimously agreed, confident that no objections would arise against such a proposal, causing him to hold in his rage, accusing them of conspiring to banish Arel under the pretext of the coming-of-age ceremony. Just then, Count Tempest drops another bombshell. He states that Arel's acclaim has spread beyond the lower classes and even reached foreign territories. He subtly suggests that the king might want to consider Arel as a potential heir. This insinuation provokes the king into a furious response. His fist smashes onto the table, and his aura erupts, a testament to his unwavering resolve. He insists vehemently that the crown prince is the indisputable successor, and that Arel has no ambition to claim the throne. However, Duke Gast interjects that rumors of Arel's suitability for the throne are already widespread in other countries. Young noblemen are showing more support for the third prince than the crown prince, swaying public opinion. He warns the king of the potential fallout from this situation, leaving the king in troubled silence. As the retainers present a stack of appeals from concerned nobles, they express their desire for stability within the kingdom. He realizes that these requests, all advocating for Arel to be sent far away, represent an ultimatum from the nobility. Begrudgingly, he agrees to consider their suggestions, and asks them to recommend suitable territories for Arel. Back in his office, Prince Arel opens a letter informing him of the outcome of the king's meeting. Understanding the noble's ploy to exile him under the pretense of granting him territory, he bursts into laughter. Excitedly, he exclaims that he now has his own territory. He dismisses any interest in the throne, seeing the nobles as latent threats, and firmly believes that having his own territory far surpasses the dubious honor of being encircled by such conniving figures. Overwhelmed with joy, he shouts his plans to settle down in his new territory and build a house, finally achieving a sense of independence and control. In the frigid realm of Fahelia in the north, where snow blankets the landscape all year round, one risks a frozen end with a careless visit. This is the land reserved as Prince Arel's territory. Reading the description of his new land, Prince Arel acknowledges the challenging farming conditions and discerns the ill intent of the nobles. With a resolute thud, he slams his book shut and announces his departure 1 month after his coming-of-age ceremony. He calculates that he has a year and a month to make the necessary preparations. As his retainers gather before him, hanging on his every word, he emphasizes the enormity of their task. Independence from other territories isn't a child's undertaking, and it's a challenge fit only for the resolute. He pledges to assist those unable to join him in finding other positions, while urging those who choose to stay to act swiftly, causing a unanimous agreement to echo through the room. As the servants disperse, Arel takes comfort in the knowledge that his alchemist team and most of his close associates will remain by his side. Meanwhile, Sena can't help but express her discontent at their destination, Fahelia. Intrigued, Prince Arel queries her concerns. Sena recounts her year-long deployment there, surprising Arel with yet another entry in her catalog of dangerous assignments. She narrates tales of extreme cold and peril, but also notes the relatively low monster population, suggesting it may not be as dangerous as it seems. Arel, however, interprets her effort to find positives as a sign of just how harsh Fahelia truly is. He empathizes with the scheming noble's decision to dispatch him to such a place. Yet he reassures them as he leans back on his chair, claiming the situation is better than he'd anticipated. This declaration sends waves of shock through his guards as he elaborates on the scenarios he had imagined, such as a land infested with ferocious monsters or a treacherous dragon's nest. Realizing that he will be residing in a cold but manageable territory, he expresses gratitude that it isn't as dire as he had feared, emphasizing that it's a manageable challenge. Lost in his thoughts, Prince Arel is unaware of the watchful eyes of his guards, their expressions brimming with concern. Even Sena's eyes well up with tears as she contemplates the challenges that lie ahead for the prince. In unison, they make a solemn vow to protect Prince Arel no matter what. However, Prince Arel misunderstands their intentions, believing there is a miscommunication between them. Later in the week, Asha and Sena stood guard outside Prince Arel's chambers. Asha broached a topic, urging Sena to be honest. However, Sena was confused about what Asha meant. Sensing her confusion, Asha clarified, reminding Sena of a previous conversation about the tundra, and a realization dawned on her. Sena noticed the chilling truth about Fahelia, a desolate tundra offering nothing but biting cold. The knights were stationed in Fahelia primarily to deter monsters incapable of withstanding the severe cold from venturing too far. Sena jokingly asked if Asha desired to remain at the castle, to which Asha responded with an annoyed look that she plans to follow Prince Arel, even if their destination is worse than Fahelia. Asha expressed her surprise at the noble's decision to exile the prince. However, Sena was more optimistic, assuring Asha that they shouldn't worry too much. She believed that once Asha looked into Prince Arel's eyes, she would see that he had a plan. Sena admitted she didn't fully comprehend it, but she could sense a lack of frustration in his eyes. With trust placed in the prince, they resolved to keep their families informed of their circumstances and planned to send letters home, ensuring their loved ones were updated on their situation. Inside his chambers, Prince Arel heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally completed the blueprint he had been working on. However, his thoughts turned to his mother, who was undoubtedly heartbroken about his impending departure. Pacing in circles, he pondered his next steps. He had already instructed the maid not to inform his mother about the circumstances of the territory, but he was still concerned about her safety and the looming threat, like the one that happened to Kania. Prince Arel considered how to create a means of communication, such as ultra-long-distance communication spheres, teleportation magic circles, or magic scrolls. He even contemplated hiring a dedicated magician. After weighing his options, he concluded that he needed to consider everything carefully. For the time being, he focused on the preparations for the impending journey towards that harsh territory, but the landscape seemed oddly appealing to him, an ideal haven for a former professional like himself to lead a tranquil existence. Arel's preparation for independence. Step 1. A group of magicians appeared before Prince Arel, ready to offer their assistance. Among them were Pian and his disciples, familiar faces that surprised the prince. After exchanging greetings, Arel disclosed that he was about to share a secret with them. Pian solemnly pledged that whatever was revealed would remain confidential. Prince Arel then unrolled a blueprint, explaining that they needed to create an item based on its design as quickly as possible. Pian, scrutinizing the plan, realized that this was no ordinary artifact. He looked at Arel in surprise, questioning whether the prince had designed it himself or received it from someone else. Nonchalantly, Arel confirmed that he had drawn the blueprint, an improved version of the brain-activating artifact known as the Sage's Necklace, which he'd previously gifted to Korea. Pian was astounded to learn that, according to the blueprint, this new design promised twice the effectiveness at a tenth of the production cost and marveled at the young prince's innovative brilliance. Prince Arel inquired if they could manufacture it, and Pian was confident they could since the blueprint was flawless. All they needed were the materials. However, Pian, knowing the creator of the original artifact, was at a loss for words. Sensing his hesitation, Prince Arel planned for this and revealed a sack of gold coins from a drawer. This fee, he explained, was for their silence about the project. Pian was unfazed, so Arel unveiled another sack for materials and labor. Generously, he promised more gold for future transactions. At this grand display, the magician's composure crumbled, and they vowed to fulfill the prince's request. Arel, pleased with their response, looked forward to their collaboration, expecting the completion of the project within a month. Little did they know of his boundless ambition. Arel's belief was that money was the most effective way to command obedience. A few days later, the magicians returned, weary but successful, presenting their creation as the Grey Sage's Necklace, a title that Prince Arel swiftly dismissed. Upon examining the necklace, he was pleasantly surprised by its quality and swift completion, so with the prototype approved, he instructed them to mass-produce the necklace. Misunderstanding his request for 50 more pieces as a mere 5, the magicians were stunned when he clarified the number. Despite their evident fatigue, Pian committed to fulfilling the order. As the disciples trudged away, Prince Arel wore a smug smile. Reflecting on their plight, he mused about the harsh and often unfair nature of life. Yet, he thought, for someone like him, who had lived 100 lifetimes, the perspective was quite different. Arel's preparation for independence. Step 2. A lone wagon traversed the night landscape, carrying Asha and Prince Arel, as Arel was busy munching on cookies. Asha questioned their destination, suggesting that he could have ordered whatever he needed. However, Prince Arel insisted that this particular acquisition required a personal touch. When Asha verified that he wished to make a purchase in person, Prince Arel revealed that they were headed to a slave market. As the words echoed in her mind, Asha was shocked. She swiftly cautioned the prince against the idea of buying slaves, interpreting it as a sign of an escalating power obsession. Prince Arel, taken aback by her reaction, realized she had misunderstood his intentions, turning their carriage ride into a tumultuous affair. Upon hearing their destination was the slave market, Asha's mind swirled with grim imagery. She envisioned Prince Arel subjecting the slaves to inhumane treatment, making them toil in the freezing cold, and administering harsh whippings as punishment. She pictured him ominously warning the slaves to perform their duties flawlessly, or they wouldn't be fed even a single slice of bread. Prince Arel was genuinely shocked and deeply hurt by Asha's horrific assumptions about his conduct. He implored her to cast aside these misconstrued perceptions. With a note of sincere regret in her voice, she apologized to the prince for harboring such prejudiced thoughts of him. And with that, their nocturnal journey drew to its conclusion. Usually, when one envisions a slave market, the mind often paints a grim scene of undernourished, desperate individuals pleading for salvation from the confines of iron cages. It's essentially a place of tormented souls, where familial bonds are callously severed. But upon Prince Arel's arrival at the slave market, he was taken aback by the neatness of the surroundings. Every corner was immaculate, and the slaves working there looked surprisingly robust. Asha elucidated to Prince Arel that should a slave succumb to an unknown illness, it would spell disaster for all. Thus, stringent cleanliness protocols were paramount. After absorbing Asha's insights, Prince Arel acquiesced, appreciating the significance of this practice. Overhearing Asha's narrative, a man concurred with her points. He went on to extol the slave market's exceptional management system, dubbing it the preeminent slave market in the capital, unsurpassed in its stringent and effective operations. The man extended his greeting to Prince Arel and introduced himself as Ian, the overseer of the slave market. Prince Arel informed him that formalities were unnecessary, as he was merely a prospective client and Ian should know the details of this trip. Amused, Ian responded that such an occasion called for even more decorum, and he beckoned them to follow him as he clarified that they adhered to lawful procedures in the slave market, where patrons could trade in the buying and selling of slaves. He happily wanted to quell Prince Arel's concerns, asserting that there was nothing to fret about. Curious, Prince Arel turned to Asha to inquire about the circumstances that led people into slavery. However, before he could finish his sentence, Asha answered as if she had read his thoughts. She explained that some individuals found themselves shackled in servitude because they had failed to pay their taxes, or because they were the last vestiges of noble families that had once flourished but had now crumbled into decay. This revelation spurred a question from Prince Arel. He inquired if a person would be instantaneously enslaved if their family fell into ruin. Yet the stark truth, as Asha pointed out, was that within the bounds of slavery, at least they were spared the torturous pangs of starvation. He had also noted that they also housed thieves and other offenders. However, he was quick to assure Prince Arel that there was no cause for alarm regarding these individuals. As he ushered them into his office, the implication hung in the air that the lawbreakers were segregated from the general slave population. Prince Arel presumes that, given Ian's foreknowledge of his visit, he had already dealt with the criminals. If his assumption held true, then he had no objections whatsoever. As Ian settled into his seat, a shift came over his demeanor, and he inquired about the kind of slaves Prince Arel was seeking. In response, the prince conveyed his need for a significant number of slaves and questioned whether such a demand could be accommodated. Ian, brimming with assurance, confirmed that it was possible and queried about the exact number of slaves the prince intended to acquire. Upon hearing that Prince Arel was planning on securing at least 150 slaves, Ian was taken aback. The prince asked if this number was too overwhelming for him. Gathering his composure, Ian reassured him that it wouldn't be an issue. Their organization maintained a facility outside the capital specifically for slave management. Consequently, accommodating thrice the number requested wouldn't pose a problem, but Ian questioned the prince's need for such an extensive workforce. In response, Prince Arel assured him that his intentions were not sinister, and that Ian needn't fret over the intended use of the slaves. The prince, however, did stipulate a specific requirement for the slaves he sought to acquire. He requested that Ian provide him with several groups of 4 or 5 slaves who shared familial ties, were close neighbors, or had prior acquaintanceships. Taken aback by this unorthodox request, Ian voiced that fulfilling such a requirement might pose a challenge, as it was not unusual for entire families to be subjected to slavery. Notwithstanding, he beckoned his subordinates to produce a list of slaves that met Prince Arel's stipulations. Perusing the list of potential candidates, Prince Arel sought Ian's assistance in selecting slaves literate enough to read. He further queried if it would be feasible to have the slaves delivered to a designated location. To this, Ian readily accepted. Upon reaching an agreement, Prince Arel presented the payment, astonishing Ian with a pouch teeming with an array of jewels and gold. Such a lavish offering made Ian particularly accommodating to the prince's demands, reinforcing the prevailing belief that money remains the most effective negotiator. Later that day in the carriage, Asha questioned Prince Arel regarding his intentions for the slaves. The prince gleefully shared that they were slated to become residents of the estate towards which they were journeying. He understood that the populace of the territory was sparse, and perceived no value in reigning over desolate lands. Further, Prince Arel envisaged supplying them with artifacts and imparting education to each family unit. His grand scheme for the slaves took Asha by surprise. With a determined mindset and a resolve that refused to be quelled, Prince Arel had no intention of simply enduring a quiet life in his territory. His ambitions were high, to make the land the finest domain possible to ensure a life of supreme comfort for himself. After all, the Manwha is aptly titled, "How a Former Pro Takes Advantage by Doing an Easy Job." Each decision, every action, was geared towards ensuring the ease of his life. Grinning from ear to ear, he relished the thought of putting his newly acquired workforce to good use, pushing them to their limits in Fahili, and as he anticipated the paradise he was to build, the sun gradually descended, as their carriage continued on the path back home. As dawn broke, Prince Arel faced the impending difficulty of bidding farewell to his family and childhood home. His mother, teary-eyed, came to see him. Engulfing him in an embrace, she voiced her concerns for his well-being. Prince Arel soothed her worries, promising frequent visits bearing gifts. He also reminded her that his departure was still a year away, imploring her to stave off her tears. Prince Arel had anticipated this emotional reaction from his mother, and chose to keep the location of the estate undisclosed for the time being. In the midst of these events, Princess Kania struggled to accept Prince Arel's impending departure, her discontent directed towards those in her vicinity. Despite comprehending the circumstances surrounding the prince, she found it challenging to reconcile them with her feelings, especially considering she hadn't seen him for 6 months, and the news had only just reached her. Her subordinates were intimidated as she radiated a formidable aura. Her subordinates quivered as she exuded an imposing aura. Unbeknownst to them, Prince Arel's book, "Anyone Can Become a Knight," explains that if one continually channels strong emotions, the mana inside the body will flow more naturally, albeit at a faster pace. Hence, on that destiny-bound day, the youngest sword master and the third in the history of the kingdom came into existence. However, the underlying catalyst, Princess Kania's mix of fascination and irritation towards her younger brother, was a truth likely to remain undisclosed. As he reflected on his past life, Prince Arel wondered if the emotions he was experiencing now mirrored those he felt back then. Time seemed to have a way of accelerating during pivotal moments in his life. He remembered how the days between receiving his enlistment notice and the day he joined the military seemed to blur and pass in a swift rush. A similar feeling was now pervading him as he prepared to venture out to establish his own territory, as each day rushed by, bringing him closer to his impending independence. Now at the age of 14, he marked his birthday and coming-of-age ceremony. Among the attendees, a noble by the name of Sir Beryl approached him with celebratory words. Although he received the well wishes and congratulations graciously, Prince Arel found himself more and more irritated with each passing moment. The nobility, with their bootlicking smiles and flattering words, had become a thorn in his side. When he was a child, he could easily avoid them, pretending to sleep or acting naive. But those days were gone, and he was now expected to engage and interact with these nobles, pretending to be interested in their endless chatter. Regardless, he maintained his polite facade, carefully concealing his true feelings. After all, as a prince, such was his duty. And in just a month, he would be free of these tedious obligations and could focus on his own independent territory. As the nobility oozed with delight that Prince Arel's birthday was a celebration that every citizen will celebrate, he knew the reality was that these nobles were glad to be rid of him. Their glistening eyes and pompous laughs were merely a mask for their relief to see him banished to the countryside. However, he checked his temper and conducted himself with the decorum befitting a prince. His mother was watching after all, and he wouldn't give the satisfaction to these high and mighty nobles by losing his temper. Reassuring himself that in just a month's time, he would be liberated from the pompous circle of these nobles. Just then, Queen Alara gracefully approached Prince Arel, offering her congratulations on his coming of age. She sympathetically noted that his mother must harbor some sorrow, as the time for him to depart for his new territory approached. Rising to address the queen, Prince Arel received her sentiments, stating it was an inevitable occurrence, and that he was privileged to have the chance to contribute to the kingdom at such a young age. Inwardly, however, Prince Arel couldn't help but suspect that the queen's appearance was an attempt to probe his emotional state. Regardless, she extended her gratitude towards him, recognizing that his guidance had significantly improved Prince Zael's swordsmanship. Following this, she presented him with a gift from Prince Zael himself. A shroud of suspicion enveloped Prince Arel, as he pondered over the intent of the impending gift, since his past encounters with the queen had left him strained and contemplated a polite refusal. However, in the end, he accepted the gesture, revealing a luxurious coat, meticulously fashioned from the fur of foxes indigenous to Thalia. Upon receiving the gift, Prince Arel became aware that Queen Alara was the true puppeteer behind these events. He had entertained this notion previously, given his knowledge that Prince Zael was hardly the scheming type to orchestrate such political maneuvering against his own brother. It became clear that the only entity with enough sway to amass the appeal of the entire nobility, pushing for his early territorial assignment, was the queen herself. Aware of the queen's manipulative tendencies, Prince Arel perceived the gift as a taunting jest aimed at him, and understood that he had to rein in his anger, as succumbing to it would risk lowering himself to those he despised. Concealing his resentment behind a polished smile, he expressed his gratitude to the queen, assuring her that he had already greeted his older brother and would assist Prince Zael whenever it was required. Although Queen Alara appeared charmed by Prince Arel's proclamation, she was fundamentally indifferent to his offer of support. Their exchange was veiled in fake pleasantries and begs for the day when they would all forego their facades to never happen. As the banquet began to wind down, Prince Arel felt a nagging sensation that he had overlooked something crucial. His gaze swept the room until it landed on Princess Cania, who was still steeped in intense silence. Given the belated announcement of his departure, he expected her to harbor resentment and had planned to apologize. However, he was taken aback by the determination that suddenly appeared on her face. A sense of foreboding gripped Prince Arel as he struggled to understand Princess Cania's intent. Her demeanor, resembling that of a master who had just made a life-altering decision, sparked unease within him. He couldn't dismiss the gnawing suspicion that Princess Cania was on the verge of creating a scene. Boldly addressing her father, the king, his response was measured, suggesting they postpone their discussion, as the current setting wasn't suitable for a serious discussion. Yet Princess Cania remained undaunted, openly declaring her intention to accompany Prince Arel when he departs in a month. Her sudden announcement sent shockwaves through the crowd, and Prince Arel's gaze immediately darted to the princess's mother, hoping that she would step in. Yet, the resignation etched on her face told him that even she was helpless in the face of Princess Cania's resolution. The king's anger flared at Princess Cania's defiance, but Prince Arel knew that Princess Cania's stubbornness would only grow and that any attempt to dissuade her would only fortify her determination. Despite this, he found himself perplexed as to why Princess Cania had chosen to accompany him. Unshaken by the king's pressure, Princess Cania declared her intent to serve as Prince Arel's knight, which took Prince Arel by surprise. The king, infuriated, started to lecture the hardships of knighthood, emphasizing that wielding a sword was not enough. But before he could continue, Kanya dropped a bombshell. She publicized that she recently ascended to the coveted rank of a sword master, a proclamation that left the assembly stunned and caused Prince Arel to find himself taken aback. The king found it difficult to believe her claim as she was just 19, and the only known instance of someone achieving the title of a sword master at such a young age was the late king. Undeterred by their disbelief, Princess Kanya commandeered a sword from a nearby guard and proceeded to demonstrate her prowess to the onlooking attendees. With an impressive show of strength, she managed to cleave a table in two using nothing more than her aura. The spectators were left amazed at the spectacle, their doubts swept away by the sheer display of her martial proficiency. In a passionate declaration, Princess Kanya openly confessed her feelings and asserted her unwillingness to wed someone she didn't cherish, and declared her preference for the path of a knight over that of a traditional princess. Upon hearing her heartfelt proclamation, Prince Arel felt a surge of emotions, but the precarious situation Princess Kanya had crafted seemed to prohibit him from expressing them. Her assertion to renounce her title as a princess could yield severe repercussions, plunging Prince Arel into a panic. He questioned who could have instilled such a rebellious streak in her, only to face the unnerving realization that he might be the culprit himself. Princess Kanya then proceeded to showcase her earnestness by kneeling before Prince Arel, swearing her fealty to him as his knight, and pledging to stand by his side through all the trials they were bound to encounter.
The sword that I have trained for life, and the sword that I have to train in the future. In this place, I swear that I will dedicate it to you. I swear to stand by your side and defeat all the hardships that stand in your way with my sword. From this moment on, I, Kanya Ernesia, vow to be your knight.
Prince Arel is beset with doubts concerning Princess Kanya's alleged knighthood. As she is a royal princess, her lack of a formal knighthood is concerning. Moreover, she lacks his consent, which casts further uncertainty over her claim. To compound his troubles, the eyes of numerous nobles are scrutinizing their every move. The gravity of a knight's oath is immense, particularly for an individual who has ascended to the esteemed rank of Aura Master like Princess Kanya. With this understanding, the crowd has no option but to acknowledge the oath. Amid this, Prince Arel is beset by a throbbing headache, as he recognizes they have all become pawns in Princess Kanya's calculated scheme. In Princess Kanya's mind, her decision to follow the naive prince was far from being purely out of concern. It was a cleverly devised strategy to carve out her own destiny and evade an undesired arranged marriage. Her mother fainted upon hearing the news, while the king's face took on a stormy cast, as if he had been struck by a bolt from the blue. Prince Arel, observing the queen's reaction, couldn't help but revel in a sense of schadenfreude, considering her recent actions as a just dessert for a perpetual tormentor. However, he also recognized that the scenario had become distressingly convoluted, and the queen's foul mood was now palpable in the air. Tears welled up in Prince Arel's eyes as the gravity of the situation hit him. He ruefully pondered his curse of never having a peaceful birthday, a pattern that seemed to persist since he turned one, and wished to abstain from celebrating his birthdays with such chaotic banquets in the future. The commotion continued after the banquet, but time kept passing. Preparations for Prince Arel's departure were complete, and it was time for him to bid farewell to his mother and her loyal maid, China. His mother, awash with melancholy at her son's impending departure, reminisced about the time when he was just a baby, a memory that seemed like only yesterday to her. Prince Arel promises to visit her often and asks her not to worry too much. His mother confesses that both China and her were worried when he was a baby because he did not cry often, but expresses her gratitude that he matured seamlessly. After hearing his mother's words, Prince Arel realizes he still has a long way to go. His mother advises him not to hesitate to ask for help if he ever gets sick. He yearned to comfort her, to tell her that his new territory poses no danger, but is caught off guard to find out she already knows about his new estate. This revelation forces Prince Arel to confront the fact that, no matter his experience and abilities, he remains helpless in front of his mother. As his mother bids him goodbye, a wave of emotions overwhelms the prince, causing tears to well up in his eyes. Independence, after all, represents a divide between parents and their offspring. Even though the prince has the liberty to return at any time, the farewell still stirs up feelings of sadness. Under the onslaught of a severe snowstorm, he embarks on his journey towards the kingdom's northernmost region, a stretch of frozen soil tucked beneath towering icy peaks. His destination is the formidable ice continent, a place that no one has successfully reclaimed. The prince contemplates the hardness of the frozen soil, realizing that even iron would likely fail against it should he command someone to dig. As Prince Arel sticks his head out of the carriage window, he ponders the intentions of the nobles who assign him to this forsaken place, hollering that he will persevere, even if thrown into a lava pit. He boldly claims he'll turn this hostile environment into his personal paradise. Princess Kania, less amused, tells him to stop his tomfoolery and shut the carriage window. Feeling grateful, Prince Arel appreciates his investment in the heat-producing magical tool, and even the coat gifted by the queen, despite his initial disdain for it. Princess Kania, unfazed by his dramatics, points out that the carriage is already well insulated and urges him to stop exaggerating, causing her to wonder how much money was spent on this carriage. Prince Arel finds himself puzzled by Princess Kania's casual attire despite the chilling temperatures. Utilizing his skills to perceive her mana, he's astonished to discover that she's using mana as insulation. It hadn't crossed his mind that Princess Kania could perform such a feat, and he wonders if she's doing so instinctively. Impressed, Prince Arel compliments her on possessing such an incredible talent. Realizing that the prince has noticed her mana insulation ability, Princess Kania assumes it to be a common skill, and he playfully counters that if she shared this belief with his escort knights, they would likely burst into tears, emphasizing the rarity of her skill. Prince Arel then earnestly questions Princess Kania if she harbors any regrets about her choice. Emitting an imposing, dark aura, she retorts, questioning if his aversion towards her is so great that he can't bear her company. Undeterred by any objections, Princess Kania resolves to accompany Prince Arel, adopting the guise of an apprentice knight. The king, the prince, and even her own mother spent an entire day attempting to dissuade her, yet Princess Kania remained resolute, disregarding their pleas and subsequently running away. Her actions reflect her determination and independence, willing to defy even her royal family to pursue her chosen path. Princess Kania firmly expresses no remorse over her actions, viewing it instead as an excellent opportunity. Had she chosen to remain in the palace, she would have inevitably been betrothed in no time. Prince Arel, understanding her predicament, can't help but express surprise over the fact that she remains unengaged at her age of 19, which in their society is considered ripe for marriage. Prince Arel assumes that her decision to follow him was perhaps born out of a distaste for confinement. Princess Kania, on the other hand, intends to embrace her freedom. The prince, curious, inquires about her prospective betrothed, to which she responds that she remains ignorant of his identity as she had declined the arrangement without so much as hearing his name. Hearing this, Prince Arel can only sympathize with the unnamed man, who, he imagines, must be grateful to him for having been spared the challenge of dealing with Princess Kania's spirited temperament. As their carriage finally rolls up to the estate, Prince Arel takes in the sight before him an army of 1,000 soldiers, 200 slaves destined to become the new residents of the territory, along with his coterie of alchemists and maids. Gazing at this tableau with resolute determination in his eyes, he stands on the precipice of his grand endeavor to build his own personal paradise amidst the harsh, icy wilderness. Prince Arel's first step was easily taken over by Asha and Sena, who commanded Falia's military. As for Princess Cania, although it was a pity, the prince had no intention of entrusting her with any work at all. The reason is that he worried the knight's barracks would collapse in just one day with her in charge. As Prince Arel watched Princess Cania frolicking in the snow, he speculated that she was not particularly concerned about the cold, considering how she had been tirelessly playing ever since they arrived. Settling into his chair, Prince Arel prepared to get down to work, unfazed by the flurry of activity outside. As Prince Arel delved into the records, he noticed that Falia had a population of approximately 10,000 people spread across 12 villages. He realized that reaching each village would require careful navigation. The majority of the inhabitants were hunter-gatherers who had been dwelling in the area for many generations. There hadn't been any influx of new residents for quite some time, and the population had been steadily dwindling. As Prince Arel immersed himself further in the documents, he discovered that his new territory was not just impoverished, but was also on a dire trajectory toward ruin. He noted with interest that even the royal palace had exempted the territory from taxation, simply ignoring it rather than making an effort to uplift its conditions. Intrigued about the previous lord, Prince Arel delved into a ledger that contained more detailed information. It emerged that the previous lord had been ambitious, embarking on a grand endeavor to revitalize the land. Yet, owing to the territory's high deficit, the lord was forced to borrow money from other regions. Ultimately, the previous lord's ambitious dreams crumbled under the weight of financial struggles, leading to his bankruptcy. Overwhelmed with frustration, Prince Arel dismissively threw the ledger. He felt his mood sinking further into despair as he reflected on the grim prospects of his new territory and chastised the previous lord, thinking him to be a prime example of an imbecile, and shifted his attention to the map, hoping to obtain some alternate solutions. As he studied the map, Prince Arel pondered if there were any remarkable features about his land. Given the sparse population, he figured there must be numerous untouched trees dotting the region. An idea sparked in his mind: paper. Paper was considered a valuable commodity in their world. If he could harness the territory's resources to produce paper, perhaps he could overturn his current situation. Despite the dire circumstances, Prince Arel felt a surge of optimism. After all, his products were still maintaining steady sales. The next course of action now is to meet the village chiefs, the true commanders of the territories. After all, if the lord is incompetent, then there should be capable people who kept the village alive, and so Prince Arel sent out directives that no village chief should be absent. As the chiefs gathered in his estate, Prince Arel immediately discerned their robust strength, a trait presumably cultivated from the rigorous environment and the need to hunt in the frigid wilderness. He speculated that some of these hardened individuals could probably grapple wolves barehanded. As the village chiefs paid their respects to Prince Arel, recognizing him as their new lord, they humbly knelt before him. In response, Prince Arel reciprocated their greetings and formally introduced himself. Anticipating their perception of him as a mere child who happened to wield power, he felt the need to assert his authority from the get-go. Observing the crowd, Prince Arel noticed a relatively young face among the chiefs. Highlighting this, he reminded them of his explicit instruction, the summoning of all village chiefs. It was an unsubtle hint that he was perceptive, detail-oriented, and expected his commands to be adhered to. The youthful village chief, taken aback, hastily knelt down and explained that his ascension was a result of his father's passing earlier that year. Prince Arel, already aware of the situation, clarified that he hadn't intended to single out the young man. He just wanted to display his power. To show his hospitality, the prince had arranged a warm meal for the assembled chiefs. Understanding the rigors of their journey, he believed they would appreciate this thoughtful gesture. Their surprise and gratitude were evident, marking it as the first occasion a lord had shown such generosity. Contrarily, Prince Arel held a cunning scheme up his sleeve. He was conscious of the unwritten social rule. Those of lower ranks were often uncomfortable sharing a meal with their superiors. So, he decided to exploit this discomfort to his advantage. He persuaded them with false pleasantness, insisting they eat even if it would deplete his provisions. Reading their expressions, he could see the village chief squirming with unease. His heart was set on making this the most uncomfortable gathering they'd ever experienced. With a wry smile, he thought to himself that this could possibly be the worst feast ever. Their responses were filled with anxiety and reminded him of how hard he had to practice, all the while being the butt of Princess Kanya's and his escort's amusement. The village chiefs were overjoyed when they discovered their meal included meat, but to Prince Arel, he expressed his regret for not being able to provide them with a more luxurious feast. And as they took their first bites, their delighted expressions filled the room with joy. One of them noticed the taste of salt, and the prince was aware of how valuable this commodity was in the region. By sharing the same meal, he sought to forge a bond of unity with the village chiefs. The prince speaks candidly about the reality of their situation, making it clear that adherence to their current way of life would ultimately lead to their downfall. He poses a pointed question to them, asking if they would prefer a ruler who pursued lofty ideals but disregarded their well-being. His frank declaration stirs the chiefs, some reacting with a hostility bred from years of disillusionment. Prince Arel, however, remains undeterred, reiterating his point. If they continue down their present course for another decade, their homes, their way of life, and everything they hold dear will be lost. Prince Arel cautioned the village chiefs that in the days to come, he would issue a series of commands that might not be immediately comprehensible to them. However, he requested them to trust his judgment, assuring them that his intentions were rooted in the welfare of their villages. His bravado moved some of the chiefs, and began to regard him with religious admiration, likening him to a savior. However, Prince Arel quickly dispelled this image, as he had no desire to be associated with religious fanaticism. The prince promises them that even though it will be troublesome if they follow his orders, he will ensure that their lives improve. His first order is to accept the newcomers he brought along. These people, who were previously enslaved, would receive an education and work at the estate, helping with various tasks. The village chiefs express concern, pointing out that it's not their acceptance that's the problem, but rather how the other villagers might react. They wonder if the other residents will accept these newcomers into their community. Prince Arel is aware of the entrenched class divide and assures the village chiefs not to worry about it. All they have to do is accept them and pressure them, while showing a devious look since they already took his sincerity, causing the village's chiefs to shake in fear and ultimately accept defeat. After the meeting, the young village chief asks if the previous lords were similar to the prince. As the old village chief replies, with a certain level of skepticism, and finds him strange, he compares him to the previous lords, as most of the appointed lords never showed interest in the place. The previous lord attempted something but only ended up causing the residents to starve or become injured. Since the prince is just a young boy who recently had his coming-of-age ceremony, and the youngest royal prince at that, the old village chief ponders over the reason for his arrival, but hopes he won't be as foolish as the previous lord. After looking into the young lord's eye, he saw an extraordinary spirit that set him apart from those who had come before, and only time would reveal if this unusual prince could indeed bring about a change for the better. For now, they had no choice but to place their faith in their new, young lord. As Prince Arel lounged comfortably on Sana's lap, displaying a certain childlike ease, she inquired whether he was delving into the stack of documents recently handed over by the servants. With a look of concern, Prince Arel acknowledged that he was indeed doing so. Thinking back to when he had first assumed control, his estate was home to nearly 10,000 inhabitants. But upon meticulous inspection, he noted a decline in the population. Sana then mentioned that the population had dwindled considerably since her last assignment in Falia. acknowledging that the low birth rates were an inevitable consequence of the prevalent poverty in Thalia. Prince Arel racked his brain for solutions. His available reserves topped out at approximately 450,000 gold pieces. If he continued operating under the status quo, his funds would be depleted within 50 years. Feeling that he had been set up to fail in Thalia, he acknowledged the futility of farming in the area, knowing that the previous lord had tried and failed. As he continued to explore potential strategies, the prospect of trading and leveraging the area's unique commodities began to seem like a plausible solution. After pondering for a while, Prince Arel eventually found an idea, and he eagerly set out to establish the foundation for his new plan. The first step to save the ruined territory would be to improve the roads. Due to frequent snow and lack of proper maintenance, the ground was unstable, and the roads were in poor condition. The prince thus commanded the people of Thalia to kick off a comprehensive road construction project, promising fair wages for their labor. While they harbored initial reservations, the people ultimately committed to the task, primarily due to the prince's commitment to shoulder the cost of construction. As the villagers assembled at the project site, they were taken aback by the resources at their disposal. One of the workers, upon inspecting the prince's plans, remarked on the expansive scope of the construction project. Unfazed, Prince Arel replied that the project's duration was of no consequence, assuring them that he would compensate their efforts generously. Encouraged by the prince's words, the workers became immediately energized. The residents worked diligently to complete the road construction while the prince observed them, noting that everyone was striving hard to ensure they could eat, which was an undeniable truth of the world. Once the road construction was completed, Prince Arel commended the workers for their outstanding efforts and asked them to till the rest of the land. The second step to save the ruined territory involved establishing a merchant company in Thalia. Most merchants initially refused due to Thalia's desolate reputation, but they were eventually convinced through the power of bribery. Indeed, who could resist? When one hand holds you by the collar, demanding your attention, and then the other presents a sack of gold, encouraging your silence and cooperation? With that, Prince Arel successfully set up the merchant company, dealing primarily with everyday essentials needed by the residents. Through the company, he was able to control the prices, ensuring fairness and affordability. This strategy not only benefited the residents, but also attracted peddlers and small merchants to actively participate in the trade, thus stimulating economic activity within the territory. For the final step to save the ruined territory, Prince Arel turned to Damon, asking whether the production of paper was within their reach. Despite its relatively low quality, paper made through a process of steaming and weaving fibers held considerable value, as the knowledge to produce it eluded the kingdom, making it expensive and reserved for the higher classes. Damon, recognizing the immense value this product could hold, showed great enthusiasm for the idea. However, he was uncertain about the production process and asked Prince Arel if he knew of anyone capable of initiating such a project. Prince Arel had already formulated a plan prior to bringing up the subject with Damon. Anticipating Damon's concerns about potential backlash from competitors, the prince assured him that the uniqueness of their production method would result in a product unlike any other currently available. Hence, they could legitimately claim to be selling a completely different item. Prince Arel laid before Damon a detailed blueprint of the machinery required for paper production. Stunned, Damon immediately acknowledged the perfection of its design. However, it was evident they couldn't construct it themselves due to its complexity. Yet, hope was not lost, as Damon relayed that the royal capital housed a group of ingenious dwarves famed for their unrivaled craftsmanship and ability to materialize anything, no matter how intricate. The prince, delighted at this news, began to grab his money pouch, but his excitement was promptly curbed when Damon mentioned that these dwarves were not easily persuaded, and their cooperation couldn't be bought with mere gold. Due to their pride, the dwarves preferred projects that allowed them to demonstrate their craft's excellence. Simply put, if they found a commission uninteresting, they wouldn't hesitate to decline. In the meantime, Damon suggested sending the blueprint to one of the dwarves he knew, which Prince Arel warmly agreed to. Several days later, at the dwarves' blacksmith shop, an old dwarf was lecturing the others, urging them not to be lazy. He warned that any slacking off would result in a doubled workload the next day. Suddenly, he was interrupted by one of his apprentices, who informed him of a letter they had received. The master dwarf immediately grew angry, assuming it was yet another request from the nobles. However, he was corrected and told that it came from the same alchemist who had visited 10 years ago. Recognizing the name, he took the letter and eagerly began to read it. After reading the contents, the master dwarf asked his apprentice, Ben, to take charge of the others for a while. With an angered expression, the master dwarf swiftly left. Ben was curious about the letter's content, which had seemingly provoked the master dwarf and made him feel underestimated. As Aiken's shop fills up, a total of 35 dwarven blacksmiths take their places. At the head of the assembly, Aiken lounges casually with a pipe in his hand. His relaxed demeanor does little to quell the growing curiosity and mild impatience of the gathered crowd, as these blacksmiths are usually engrossed in their own work. Halting their duties requires a significant reason, and with beverages lined up before them, misunderstandings start to take place, as the blacksmiths assume that Aiken is merely indulging in his free time, and he should have just drank and slept by himself. This uncertainty ripples through the assembly, filling the room with tension, and the unvoiced questions linger in the heavy air. Finally, Aiken pulls out a parchment and informs the blacksmiths that this intricate blueprint was hand-drawn and delivered by a young lad who needed them to fabricate an item for Fahelia. Among them, a bald-headed blacksmith lets out an amused chuckle, labeling the child cheeky and speculating the blueprint to be merely a borrowed concept. However, Aiken dispels that notion, as his demeanor turning serious and acknowledging that he too had the same doubts, but opens up the blueprint fully, laying it bare for everyone to inspect. A stunned silence sweeps over the gathering as the blacksmiths process the detailed design before them. Doubts creep in, sparking questions about the design's seriousness. The blueprint sprawled on the table is anything but ordinary. It's a veritable gauntlet thrown down. With an authoritative tone, Aiken reveals the true purpose of the blueprint. It outlines the construction of a machine designed to produce paper, which stirs up memories of an event 5 years ago, when an individual from the East had harbored a similar ambition to manufacture top-tier paper. Unfortunately, the collective skills of the blacksmiths at the time had proven insufficient, unable to meet his high standards. The resulting sense of humiliation and shame had been so overwhelming that they had nearly renounced their hammers in despair. Lifting the blueprint for all to see, Aiken makes a proud declaration stating that an innovator in Fahelia has managed to conceptualize the technologies and ideas they could not fathom half a decade ago, and now seeks their assistance. As the passion in their eyes appear, Aiken lets out a weary sigh. His message is clear. If none among them have the guts to take on this challenge, he is prepared to step up to the task by himself, gaslighting the other blacksmiths with his words, and ends up disheartening Ponytail Smith and pleads for Aiken to reconsider. Another blacksmith intervenes, bringing up the substantial amount of work Aiken would inevitably leave behind, but reassure them that he will place his burden on his unsuspecting apprentice. Moreover, if Aiken were the only one to depart, they would face a labor shortage in Fahelia, thus causing the murmuring to stop suddenly. Suddenly, each blacksmith is vying to join the project, clamoring over one another to get closer to Aiken and his tantalizing blueprint. With excuses filling the air, some argue that their presence on a mere business trip is warranted. Aiken, having anticipated this commotion, observes how the blueprint has ignited a spark of interest among the blacksmiths. Their previously expressed doubt has turned into an uncontrolled frenzy, and as chaos ensues, Aiken raises his voice,
"Shut up!"
booming above the clamor. His words demand an immediate halt to the frenzied scrambling, stating that if everyone rushes off on this endeavor, he warns them that the forge will be left unmanned and would cause a disaster for their ongoing commitments. He declares that only half the crowd can embark on this journey, causing everyone to start exchanging heated glances as they begin to weigh their options. Aiken stands firm in his decision, suggesting that they need to establish who gets to partake in this journey, and he has just the idea for it. Upon hearing Aiken's proposition, the crowd concurs. A moment later, Ben checks up on his master to ask him something, but he stumbles onto a chaotic scene, a surprisingly physical solution to the problem of allowing only half of the blacksmiths to go to Fahelia. Apparently, this is the blacksmiths' way of sorting out their disagreements. A free-for-all fistfight, a rough-and-tumble melee where no punches are pulled. Indeed, they even resort to yanking each other's beards. This is the unspoken code of the dwarf blacksmiths, the devoted craftsmen of the forge for generations. Observing the commotion, Ben gently closes the door, not wishing to interrupt their intense confrontation, seemingly being no stranger to this particular method of conflict resolution. Meanwhile, Prince Arel is lounging lazily in his territory, calculating that it will take at least 5 days for the dwarves to reach him, and wonders how to pass the time until their arrival. Excited, he leaps from his chair that was apparently placed on the bed. Comment down below if you ever placed your chair on the bed like Prince Arel. After all, he will always find a shortcut to his comfort zone. Devoid of any immediate tasks, Prince Arel wraps himself into a cozy burrito using a blanket and proposes a delightful idea to himself: a nap. His plan is disrupted, however, by a sudden, ear-piercing screech from Fly. Angered by the disturbance, the prince rises and wonders why Fly has suddenly become so loud. Looking out the window, he spots Fly tumbling downward, an unusual sight considering Fly's ability to, well, fly. The prince's bewilderment escalates as he ponders how such a young griffin could have climbed to his room in the first place, let alone achieve such a swift descent. The scene becomes even more surreal when Princess Kanya steps in just in time to catch the plummeting Fly. With a comforting whisper, she reassures Fly she will help him go higher, and launches him back into the air with a mighty toss. Just then, Prince Arel emerges from the castle and confronts Princess Kanya, asking if Fly had done something wrong like tug at her dress. The princess denies any misbehavior on Fly's part, and as she was distracted by the prince, she fails to catch Fly on his descent. The sprawled Fly reminds me of a scene of Yamcha. Alarmed by what he just witnessed, Prince Arel questions Princess Kanya's intentions. She insists it's a misunderstanding, merely a training exercise, leaving the prince flabbergasted as he contemplates whether her actions constitute training or abuse. And so, we unravel the complete sequence of events behind this spectacle. Earlier, when everyone else had been assigned various tasks, Princess Kanya alone found herself without duties, free as a bird and aimlessly wandering the castle grounds. Asha and Sena, engrossed in their respective obligations, had little time for her. So her daily routine consisted of feasting, training in swordsmanship, sleeping, and then repeating the cycle. Being the restless spirit she is, boredom soon got the better of her, and during her snack break, Fly stumbled upon Kanya's line of sight as he was frolicking in the castle garden. This serendipitous encounter spurred a brilliant idea in her mind. Little did she know, however, that this would mark the beginning of Fly's misfortune. Princess Kanya makes her intentions clear, as Fly is destined to be a riding beast, and so his training must commence without delay. Witnessing her relentless training regimen for the seemingly distressed griffin, Prince Arel realizes the motive behind her actions. He watches as Kanya attempts to rouse Fly by shaking him, much like a child would a stuffed bear, and broods over this scene, regretting that he should have taught Princess Kanya common sense alongside her swordsmanship lessons. But seeing everyone else busy and himself with time to spare, he contemplates the idea of engaging in some sibling play with Kanya. However, he struggles with the notion, given his history. In his past life, his blood relatives had strained relationships, characterized by frequent conflicts. The most normal interaction he could recall was a somber conversation held at a deathbed. Thus, a seasoned individual like Prince Arel finds himself at a loss for what to do in this unfamiliar situation. While deep in thought, he swoops in, rescuing Fly from Kanya's clutches and setting him free. This act leaves Princess Kanya bewildered, her training session abruptly interrupted. Tears of relief stream down Fly's face as he takes off, free from his strenuous ordeal. Prince Arel, presenting himself as the savior, declares that he should strive to be an exemplary younger brother in this life. Seeing Fly out of the picture, he suggests to Kanya that they should spend the day playing together. During a tense chess match with Prince Arel, Princess Kanya's patience wore thin. While she possessed a basic understanding of the game was way too hard. Submitting to her irritation, she sent the chessboard flying. Prince Arel, taken aback, hadn't expected such a dramatic reaction to a mere game. But Princess Kanya wasn't finished. She voiced her complaints, criticizing Prince Arel for not simplifying the game for her. Declaring her intention to quit, she expressed the game's demanding nature. Prince Arel had picked chess precisely to stay indoors and avoid going outside. Recognizing Princess Kanya's struggles, he offered a solution. Handing her a mystical artifact, he assured her it would enhance her cognitive abilities. In their rematch, Prince Arel's vast expertise was obvious, making him feel a bit guilty. As they played, he hoped that the mystic relic would give Princess Kanya a fighting chance. Yet, the atmosphere grew dense as Princess Kanya's anxiety became increasingly obvious. As time ticked on, the relic, unable to bear the energy it channeled, shattered abruptly. Acting on her mounting frustration, Princess Kanya unsheathed her sword and with swift precision, sliced the chessboard into even quadrants. Prince Arel could only watch in disbelief. He wanted to explain that the board wasn't merely for recreation, it was a work of art. Basking in the aftermath of her bold move, Princess Kanya turned to Prince Arel, an impish smile playing on her lips, and asked their alternatives now that chess was no longer an option. A bit off balance, Prince Arel took a moment. Going outside into the cold was hardly appealing. Trying to redirect the situation, he asked what she did on her free time, revealing that Princess Kanya spends her time training, and training even more. The difference in lifestyles became evident with Prince Arel accustomed to leisurely pursuits versus Princess Kanya's dedication to her martial training. This stark contrast made him reflect upon his own choices. Suddenly, a familiar sound echoed, and the hunger between them was evident. Prince Arel took this opportunity and proposed a culinary adventure. While Princess Kanya's initial reaction bordered on skepticism, the thought of crafting a meal together could potentially be the bonding experience they needed. While Princess Kanya had a notorious reputation for her culinary disasters, she voiced doubts about the need for such a talent. Prince Arel countered, suggesting that a knight of her stature be competent enough to whip up a basic meal. Knights, throughout history, weren't just defenders or companions. Their adventures battling creatures and safeguarding kingdoms often brought unforeseen challenges. While one might endure without food for days, prolonged hunger could be lethal. Driving his point home, Prince Arel emphasized the importance of cooking in a knight's skill set, providing Princess Kanya with a slew of persuasive reasons. Reluctantly, she conceded to the prince's culinary endeavor. Keen to boost her morale, Prince Arel promised her his unwavering support. Asking if she was ready for their maiden attempt at creating a stew. A stew is essentially a mishmash of carefully selected meats or vegetables, simmered to perfection. A common dish during travels, its beauty lay in its simplicity and low risk of going wrong. Prince Arel harbored hope that their culinary journey would at least not become a deadly food tour. Observing Princess Cania's culinary efforts, Prince Arel was genuinely impressed with her knife skills, a sentiment he did not hesitate to share. Boosted by his compliment, she confidently moved forward with the recipe, directing her to add the finely chopped ingredients to the cauldron, followed by a meticulous addition of spices and herbs. With everything in place, they allowed it to simmer, melding the flavors until every piece was perfectly tender.
Wow! Even better than Mama!
To Princess Cania's astonishment, the stew was a success, far surpassing her initial fears. Prince Arel expressed his pleasure, reminiscing about the days when he too was just a junior cook. He jokingly mentioned that given how minimal his own contribution had been, Princess Cania's emergent culinary talents were undeniable. Reflecting on the day's events, Prince Arel was content that what began as an impromptu chess duel had reached a pleasant, collaborative undertaking. With their meal winding down, he anticipated nothing more than a leisurely nap. Alas, it was not to be. A butler came running towards them, bearing urgent news, and almost made the prince spit out his stew. He had been explicit about his wish for solitude on his day off, making the staff member's interruption all the more shocking. The reason soon became clear. The attendant spoke of an unscheduled visitation. A flock of dwarves had made an imposing entrance. They were encamped outside the estate's entrance, wielding an assortment of tools and issuing bold ultimatums, demanding an audience with the prince. Annoyed by this unforeseen circumstance, Prince Arel now found himself pondering how to deal with this new challenge. Their unannounced presence in Falia was truly out of the ordinary. As the prince mentally prepared himself to engage with the dwarves, the conversation took a sudden sharp turn. Akin, a burly dwarf, pointedly inquired if Prince Arel was responsible for a certain blueprint. Without waiting for a response, Asha, fiercely protective and with a quicksilver temper, brandished her weapon, her voice steely as she demanded that Akin correct his tone. Wishing to diffuse the mounting tension, Prince Arel moved to ease Asha's fury. Dwarves, though familiar with human etiquettes and power dynamics, often opted for a more equal approach, especially those like Akin, whose reputation in crafting was unsurpassed. Such dwarves occasionally showcased an unrefined demeanor, taking pride in their skills over politics. Aiming to sidestep an escalating argument that might result in a physical confrontation, Prince Arel confessed that he was the one who drew the blueprint. However, Akin, with a deeply suspicious gleam in his eyes, countered, insinuating that the prince might be shielding the true genius behind the blueprint. As the room's tension neared a breaking point, with Prince Arel's patience thinning, he gave a heated command to Asha.
Off with his head!
But before swords could cross and grievances escalate, a group of butlers, seasoned in mitigating such altercations, promptly intervened, managing to prevent a brawl from erupting. They worked to keep the peace, recognizing that discussions were best settled through dialogue and not duels. Amidst murmurs and shared glances, Akin and his fellow dwarf blacksmiths harbored skepticism about Prince Arel's claims regarding the blueprint. Despite Prince Arel's repeated statements, doubts still lingered. Puzzled, the prince pondered their early arrival at his estate, noting a prior letter would have ensured a more fitting welcome. For Akin, letters symbolized incomplete and insincere dialogues, which he found distasteful. His primary concern revolved around the legitimacy of the commission mentioned in the earlier letter. Prince Arel, seeking to relieve these concerns, highlighted Falia's shortage of skilled blacksmiths. The intricate designs within the blueprints led Akin to voice a belief. They were beyond the capabilities of mere humans. This implied, in Prince Arel's understanding, that only the dexterous hands and keen minds of dwarves could bring such a machine to life. Unyielding in his claim, Prince Arel emphasized his role in drafting the blueprint, going so far as to label himself a genius in the process. However, The boldness of Prince Arel's claims left the blacksmiths baffled. In their eyes, his grand proclamations bordered on madness. Yet, unbeknownst to them, this was exactly the reaction Prince Arel had hoped to entice. He was well aware that sometimes, mirroring the seemingly irrational can be the key to persuading the staunchly skeptical. Before they could dive into the intricacies of payment, Aiken interjected with an air of finality. They hadn't traveled to Prince Arel's abode with mere commerce in mind. Their decision had been solidified long before their arrival. Their interest wasn't anchored in the prince's wealth or promises, but rather in the allure of the project itself. Prince Arel still sought clarity on the blacksmith's intentions, especially considering no discussions had been made regarding costs and labor estimates. Aiken's dismissal of these financial aspects was not rooted in recklessness, but rather a calculated choice. The full depth of the blueprints hadn't been revealed yet, and Aiken's sharp eyes had detected its incompleteness. He realized the remaining pieces of the blueprint were leveraged, and the blacksmiths would need to commit before the prince would unveil the entirety of his vision. With the anticipation of seeing the blueprint's entirety hanging palpably in the air, Prince Arel's reluctance to reveal all was a strategic move. The prince held a piece of the puzzle close, and as Aiken tried to employ his charm to get the rest of the blueprint, it unfortunately did not sway our prince. With the blueprint right in front of the dwarves, Aiken couldn't help but reach for it, only to find himself being teased by Prince Arel as he starts pulling the blueprint away from his reach. Aiken's temper, already simmering, flared. His eyes flashed as he questioned the prince's intentions. This was no mere trinket or piece of art. It was an intricate device that, once built, could change their world. Yet Prince Arel seemed almost playful in his withholding. Prince Arel made it clear he wasn't ready to reveal the entirety of the blueprint. Instead, he directed Aiken to first construct the portion detailed in the fragment he was willing to share. Only upon its completion would the prince consider revealing more. Aiken's temper flared at the prince's terms, but he had little choice. To gain the prince's confidence, they would need to honor his request. With a resolved nod, Aiken took the offered blueprint fragment, vowing to return upon its successful execution. While Prince Arel hadn't anticipated the fervent interest the blacksmiths showed in his design, their reaction shifted his strategy. Instead of readily providing the entire blueprint, he saw an opportunity to ignite the dwarves' zeal even further by dangling the remaining pieces just out of their reach. A day later, Aiken placed the first piece in front of Prince Arel. The signs of fatigue on the dwarf's face were evident. The prince was eager to progress, quickly handing them another fragment of the blueprint. Yet, his enthusiasm was tinged with a growing unease. It became clear that the dwarves were foregoing sleep in their zeal to see the project to completion. Each time Aiken and his team returned, they bore with them another perfectly crafted component, every one of them a testament to their remarkable skill and dedication. Prince Arel couldn't help but marvel at the speed and precision with which they worked, completing a task within days rather than the weeks he thought. Finally, after an intense period of continuous work, the machine stood in its entirety. Damon handed over the result of their combined endeavor. Pristine sheets of paper, a flawless outcome of the device's operations. Brimming with pride, Prince Arel couldn't help but vocalize that the machine's success was due to his ingenious design. However, his loud self-praise did not sit well with Aiken. After all, it was the dwarves' relentless effort and unparalleled craftsmanship that had brought the prince's vision to life. Prince Arel's innovation was revolutionary for Thalia. By mechanizing the paper production process, he dramatically shortened the time it traditionally took to make paper. Given that Thalia was rich in timber, there was no shortage of raw materials, ensuring the factory's uninterrupted operation for years to come. When Aiken questioned the satisfaction of the prince regarding the machine they had constructed, Prince Arel's contented response was palpable. But the prince's aspirations didn't stop at just one machine. He envisioned an entire facility filled with these paper-making marvels, enhancing production exponentially. It became clear that Prince Arel had commerce in mind. The rapid rate of production hinted at an imminent influx of paper into the market, and it was only a matter of time before he started trading it. Soon, a figure approached the bustling factory site. Introducing himself as Lycan Einrest, he was a direct link to Prince Arel's lineage, the younger brother of the prince's mother. Prince Arel had reached out to his maternal side, expressing his desire for a trustworthy family member to oversee the burgeoning paper trade. Without hesitation, Uncle Lycan had come to answer the prince's call, signifying the importance and potential prosperity of the venture. As Lycan was shown the stacks of pristine paper, his eyebrows rose in astonishment. The smooth, even sheets were unlike anything he had ever seen. He had expected a regular, rudimentary product, but was met with a level of quality that challenged the very definition of paper. Initially skeptical, Lycan had braced himself for disappointment. But the paper Prince Arel introduced was not only superior in quality, but also more affordable. Their most pressing concern was the potential reaction of the existing paper merchants to the prince's revolutionary products. Prince Arel managed to alleviate Lycan's fears, emphasizing that there should be no cause for concern, as their product vastly differed from what was currently available on the market. Without delay, Lycan proposed the development of a strategic sales plan. Considering their dwindling revenue, he intended to focus on distributing the paper to areas with the most pressing needs. Prince Arel attentively watched Lycan, growing ever certain of his uncle's abilities and integrity in his new role as a merchant. At this moment, the prince realized that his ambitious plan to amass a fortune was on the brink of unfolding. Just a few days later, Lycan had masterminded a successful paper distribution strategy, and with the deft skills of the dwarf blacksmiths, their factory brimmed with innovative machines. Remarkably, the diligent dwarves completed their tasks in less than a day, signaling their readiness to depart from Thalia. In gratitude, Prince Arel intended to host a lavish feast in their honor, marking the success of their collaborative efforts. However, Aiken noted the backlog of commitments awaiting them, jesting that their apprentices might very well perish without their supervision if they lingered in Thalia. As a parting gesture, Aiken assured the prince of their continued alliance. Should Prince Arel require their expertise again, a mere summon would suffice, and they would prioritize his request above all. Prince Arel marveled at the unwavering commitment of the dwarf blacksmiths to their craft, their swift departure a testament to their dedication. He found himself torn between admiration for their professionalism and perplexity at their seemingly abrupt nature. Regardless, gratitude swelled within him for the role they played in bringing his vision to life and his start of adding another product to the market. The debut of Prince Arel's paper in the market was nothing short of a sensation. Its arrival stirred disbelief among the masses, who had never held such a superior product in their hands. It wasn't just the unparalleled quality that left people astounded, but the affordability that accompanied it. Whispered conversations transformed into loud praises, applauding the resilience, finesse, and economic value of the prince's invention. But the paper wasn't the only testament to Prince Arel's visionary leadership. Stories also spread about his ambitious road construction projects, further bolstering his reputation as a forward-thinking leader. The combined allure of the paper's quality and its cost-effectiveness quickly captivated the affluent circles of society. As the crisp sheets passed through the king's fingers, he sensed a significant deviation from the customary parchment he was accustomed to. He inquired of his butler, curious about the switch in materials, upon discovering that this superior, more affordable paper hailed from Thalia under Prince Arel's governance. A mix of astonishment and pride illuminated the king's features. A knowing smile graced the king's lips, for such ingenuity was precisely what he had always hoped to witness from his son. The further revelation from the butler about Thalia's forthcoming tax contributions only deepened the king's satisfaction. The once struggling territory of Thalia, in a relatively brief span, had seen a significant economic revival, a feat that spoke volumes of the prince's leadership. The king felt a profound connection with the prince, recognizing the vision and drive that motivated the young ruler's actions. Back in the comforts of Thalia, Prince Arel resumed his favorite pastime, lazing around in the luxurious embrace of his bed. A sudden, almost whimsical feeling struck him, as if someone, somewhere, was weaving tall tales about his exploits. Little did they know, many of his achievements, impressive as they were, often stemmed from unintended consequences of his actions. But speculating on distant whispers was not on his agenda for the day. With the paper sales flourishing and Thalia's coffers filling, the prince decided he had earned his break. Today, like many before, was designated for leisure, and nothing was going to keep him from savoring every moment of it. At the heart of the kingdom, in an opulent room adorned with golden trims and lush draperies, the queen and the first prince indulged in a mid-afternoon tea. The prince took a delicate sip, only to find the flavor richer and more refined than usual. The queen, with a graceful but sinister smile, mentioned the tea was a token of gratitude from Prince Arel, thanking her for the coat she had sent. The first prince chuckled and expected nothing less from Prince Arel, as he had caught wind of Thalia's rapid rejuvenation, and was both intrigued and proud of his younger brother's accomplishments. However, there was a subtle change in the queen's demeanor that caught the prince's eye. A fleeting tremor of unease, perhaps? When he inquired, the queen, ever the master of diverting attention, deflected the question, speaking of an ornament that didn't quite catch her fancy. Yet, her mind lingered on Prince Arel's pristine white suit, wondering about the man he had become, and the future that awaited him. The prince's intrigue deepened, as the queen described the ornament's tenacity to reappear despite her efforts to put it away. It was an enigma that this simple piece could be so persistent. Recognizing the subtle unease in the atmosphere, the queen deftly changed the subject to the prince's newly acquired sword. Gratefully, he acknowledged its craftsmanship, praising the renowned skills of the blacksmiths. Each curve and gleam of the blade was a testament to their unparalleled skill. The queen's disposition shifted abruptly, reminding Prince Gil of the weighty responsibilities that lay on his shoulders as the future king. She impressed upon him that wielding a sword of regal stature was an intrinsic part of his role, urging him to embody the demeanor and mindset of a monarch. Prince Gil absorbed his mother's words, aligning with her expectations without reservation. However, the queen seemed to harbor lingering resentment towards the unexpected gesture from Prince Arel, who had developed the paper in Thalia as a token of gratitude for the coat. The notoriety of this development seemed inescapable, persistently reaching the queen's ears despite her attempts to distance herself from it. Furthermore, it became a source of ridicule, casting a shadow on her family's reputation, much to her dismay. The queen, known by her birth name, Elia Prash, hailed from a lineage that monopolized the paper trade within the realm. The Prash family was the sole proprietor of a lucrative business that imported exclusive varieties of paper from foreign lands. Historically, there were two primary sources for paper imports. One stemmed from the Merman Empire, while the other originated from the distant realms of the eastern continent. However, due to historical skirmishes and conflicts with the kingdom, the importation of paper from those territories was staunchly prohibited, severing ties and trade relations. This embargo had inadvertently placed the Prash family in an advantageous position, granting them an uncontested monopoly on the lucrative eastern trade routes. Their exclusive access to these connections allowed them to amass substantial wealth, flourishing over the generations as the dominant force in the kingdom's paper commerce sector. A surge of resentment overwhelmed the queen. In her eyes, her family had bestowed the kingdom with unparalleled luxury, offering commodities that were once out of reach for most. It was a bitter pill to swallow that the alliances and loyalties woven over the years would unravel so quickly over a new product. Her anger found a singular target, Prince Arel. She perceived his innovations as a blatant assault on her family's legacy, a legacy that had bestowed riches upon the kingdom for generations. It seemed as if Prince Arel's ingenuity had tarnished the Prash family's monopoly, an act she considered equivalent to betrayal. With her heart pounding in her chest, she stormed into her private quarters, her movements a frenetic dance of rage and desperation. She hastily rummaged through a drawer, retrieving a piece of parchment before immersing herself in the furious act of penning a letter. Her hands moved with fervor, the ink barely had time to dry as her thoughts translated into dark, determined strokes on the page. As she concluded her missive, a cold resolve settled in her heart. It was clear that the time for passive observation had passed. The Queen could no longer afford to sit idly by, allowing Prince Arel to further his ventures unimpeded. The line had been drawn, and the Queen was ready to defend her family's honor, even if it meant igniting a fire that could consume the very foundations of their kingdom. In the gentle luminescence of the moon, a mysterious figure draped in a hood disembarks from a carriage and slips into a nearby structure. A wicked smile and a low audible chuckle can be heard inside the building. Suddenly lights flicker on, revealing the manager Ian, who warmly welcomes their guest, who is none other than Prince Arel. Time seemed to have flown. It was already a year and a half since he ventured into this shadowy part of the world. And as the manager greeted him enthusiastically, questioning him if he was looking for individuals meeting the same criteria as before, Prince Arel dismissed the proposal. His requirements have altered this time around. Now, he was in pursuit of individuals who could endure the harshest of cold environments, with stamina that was nothing short of exceptional. In this second venture, the prince emphasized on acquiring individuals who were indeed genuine slaves. Curiosity piqued, Manager Ian asked the prince about the intended purpose of these slaves. Prince Arel was on a mission to build a group of individuals who could not only contribute to the growing industries in Thalia, but perhaps find a new sense of purpose and freedom within its borders. He was fully cognizant of the moral ambiguities engulfing the slave trade, but held on to a flicker of hope, a firm belief that he could grant these individuals a life markedly distant from the suffering and inhumanity that characterized their past. In response, Prince Arel raised a hand, showing 5 fingers. Initially, Manager Ian deduced that Prince Arel was requesting 500 individuals. However, he was astounded when Prince Arel specified his actual demand, a staggering total of 5,000 individuals to be incorporated into his forces, leaving the manager flabbergasted yet brimming with exhilaration at the scope of this transaction. Prince Arel smugly asked if the manager could be entrusted with this task. The manager embraced the profound duty with open arms, pledging to fulfill it with utmost dedication and precision, causing the prince to smirk, as he truly believes that money is the best tool ever invented. In just a few weeks, Prince Arel was evaluating the craftsmanship of swords forged by the blacksmith dwarves, finding them to be of impeccable quality. The swords were for the new slaves he recently received from Manager Ian, and as he was training the slaves he requested Akin and the dwarves to craft weapons and equipment for them, not knowing that the dwarves' ability to produce enough equipment to arm an astounding force of 5,000 was done in such a limited time span. When Prince Arel first welcomed his new guards, they were engulfed in despair. However, he nurtured them meticulously through kindness and fostered an environment that ignited a newfound enthusiasm during their training sessions. Under Prince Arel's guidance, these once enslaved individuals blossomed into committed soldiers, displaying unwavering loyalty to him. Elated with the strides they had made, the prince entrusted them with the task of protecting the village and the roads. Having accomplished his extensive list of tasks, he now contemplated to relax. But, under the cover of darkness, an unknown faction approached the grounds of the paper company, harboring the nefarious goal of either raising or usurping control of the famed paper factory. From a vantage point atop a cliff, a shadowy figure hidden behind a mask vigilantly surveyed the developing situation. They were well aware that the successful execution of their malicious plan would deal a significant blow to Falia's economic stability. The vigilant masked men discerned that their client harbored a deep-seated animosity towards the ruler of Falia. Nonetheless, the masked operatives remained unswayed by this personal grudge, as it was unrelated to their core objectives. Upon noting the minimal resistance, merely a pair of guards barring their path, the masked figure found the task of neutralizing them to be relatively straightforward. With the guards dispatched with ease, the figure then received new orders to eliminate all staff within the factory and to render the machinery inoperable. Much to their astonishment, the building stood vacant. The masked operative was surprised by the sudden illumination from a nearby source, mistaking it for some form of sorcery. Almost immediately, soldiers stormed the building, raising an alert about the intruders on the premises, having already apprehended a few of them outdoors. Orders quickly came down the chain of command to apprehend the masked figures, with a stern directive to use lethal force should they encounter resistance. Caught in the throes of panic, the masked operative contemplated a hasty withdrawal, but found themselves encircled and ambushed by the guards. Stunned that their intelligence was wrong, the earlier information indicating that Falia had a mere force of around 200 guards turned out to be incorrect. Prince Arel, flanked by Asha and Sena, arrived at the critical site, fully prepared to face an attack on the factory. The masked operative, finding themselves cornered, opted for immediate surrender, admitting to carrying out the orders bestowed upon them. Except, Prince Arel reprimanded the masked intruders, highlighting the severity of their offenses, which included trespassing upon the domain of a noble lord without due permission and plotting to damage invaluable resources. He issued explicit commands to his soldiers to interrogate the captives, and to take all necessary measures to prevent any possibility of escape or evasion of justice, not even with death. Asha and Sena eagerly complied with the prince's directives. In the meantime, the masked individual pleaded fervently for mercy, attributing his actions to ignorance. Just as the prince prepared to depart, the masked individual's pleas reverberated throughout the structure, a vivid testament to the gravity of his impending punishment. Under normal circumstances, Prince Arel might have overlooked this incident, considering it a minor inconvenience. However, there existed boundaries that he strictly upheld within his realm. The safety and well-being of his family, friends, and possessions were sacred. Simply put, Prince Arel would never tolerate anyone coveting what belonged to him. He was known to tackle issues with a degree of certitude that left no room for doubt or hesitation. This steadfast approach had been forged through countless cycles of experiences and learning from his past incarnations. On a snowy day, Prince Arel found himself grappling with exhaustion, having spent hours interrogating and processing the intruders as mandated by the realm's laws. It seemed their fates were sealed, destined to serve as slaves for the remainder of their lives. Despite the lengthy interrogation, Prince Arel had extracted little of value, as the intruders appeared to not know their client. It was a frustrating and fruitless endeavor. Nonetheless, Prince Arel knew he needed to bring this case to a temporary close. Prince Arel felt a sense of resolution, with only a few minor issues left to address. The pressing matters seemed to be largely under control, allowing him a moment to ponder his next steps. Fueled by a newfound eagerness to embark on a different path, he felt a surge of excitement for what lay ahead. He approached the door, his heart swelling with anticipation. As the door swung open, it revealed not just a path to a new room, but a shimmering teleport magic circle, a gateway to uncharted territories and adventures. Prince Arel had entrusted the brilliant Pian with the construction of the intricate device, channeling a significant portion of the royal treasury into the meticulous assembly and fine-tuning of magical instruments, which now stood completed before him. The prince chose not to linger on the extravagant expenses involved in its creation. Instead, he found himself in awe of Pian's insight into the trade, clearly displaying the hallmark of a seasoned businessman. Almost inadvertently, Prince Arel had become a frequent patron, consistently drawn to the expertise and craftsmanship that Pian offered. A sudden wave of homesickness washed over the prince, reminding him of the time that had passed since he last visited his mother's home. Driven by a longing for home, he decided that the teleportation circle would serve as his pathway back. With a sense of eagerness, Prince Arel placed a radiant crystal onto the designated section of the device, initiating the activation sequence of the teleportation circle. As the mechanism vibrated with growing energy, he grasped that its successful operation hinged significantly on the efforts of those manning the other segment of the teleportation circle. While the contraption gradually amassed power, Prince Arel urged Princess Cania to brace herself for their departure. However, Princess Cania appeared somewhat unwilling to make the journey home, questioning the necessity of their immediate return. With a calming demeanor, Prince Arel clarified the wonders of the teleportation magic, emphasizing how fast it would transport them home. Conveying a tinge of worry, he inquired if she had any engagements that day, eager to ensure he wasn't imposing on her time. While Princess Cania had no commitments, hesitation was in her voice. Detecting this, Prince Arel asked if there was something of the matter. Openly, she revealed her anxieties about facing her mother, particularly after their recent altercation. Adopting a nurturing approach, Prince Arel suggested that this journey could potentially offer a golden opportunity to rebuild bridges with her mother. Battling her anxiety, Princess Cania eventually gave in. Her slender frame clung to Prince Arel, and with a calming voice, he guaranteed that it was safe and the only thing they needed to worry about was motion sickness. As the magic circle reached its peak of activation, he urged her to fortify herself for the voyage, vowing to shield her as they readied themselves to traverse back to their homeland. As the apparatus activated, Princess Cania's anxiety soared. Her voice trembled as she sought affirmation of their safety. However, before Prince Arel could muster soothing words, his voice was suppressed by Princess Cania's firm grip over his neck. In a heartbeat, the spell whirled them back into a familiar setting. Once there, Prince Arel was engulfed in waves of nostalgia. A torrent of childhood memories of playing with Princess Cania on the palace grounds resurfaced vividly. He experienced a jolt of homesickness, realizing the depths of his longing for this place that brimmed with memories. Without any delay, he stretched out on the verdant grass, basking in the comforting warmth and familiar embrace it offered. Their moment of comfort was briefly interrupted by a familiar face, China, the prince's former nanny. She welcomed them with a concoction of exhilaration and apprehension, the latter emanating from her responsibility in overseeing the magical circle at the palace's end. She quickly told Prince Arel that his mother was inside, brimming with eagerness to see him. Simultaneously, Princess Cania was greeted by her maid, bearing news that her mother too was anxiously awaiting her arrival. Realizing that it was time to separate, Prince Arel encouraged Princess Cania to alleviate her mother's concerns with assurances of her safety and health. As he raced toward the palace, Prince Arel found himself consumed by a whirlwind of thoughts, primarily centered around his mother's well-being and happiness. The promise he had made to return before setting forth on his journey now sparked a mix of anticipation and anxiety within him. As he neared the doorway, he prepared himself for the comforting embrace of his mother. Finally reunited with her, the joy that radiated between them was palpable, reflected in their gentle and heartfelt hug. She shared that Uncle Lycan had been consistently forwarding letters about Prince Arel's well-being ever since he started working under him. Although the distant reassurances had offered her a semblance of peace, they couldn't compare to the profound joy overwhelming her at this moment, witnessing her son before her, very much alive and vibrant. Without hesitation, he quickly took his mother's hand and wanted to tell her about his experiences. Prince Arel began sharing stories of his Follia adventures with zest and enthusiasm. He vividly described a magical land where, against all odds, rabbits flourished amidst the relentless snow and brutal elements. His mother's eyes sparkled with childlike joy at the mention of these creatures. Opting to sustain this enchanting narrative, Prince Arel tactfully skipped over the part about their surprisingly enormous size.
Wow.
As they immersed themselves in a delightful back and forth of stories and laughter, Prince Arel's sharp senses detected the approach of several figures. The sudden arrival of the Queen marked an unforeseen shift in their heartfelt reunion. To Prince Arel, her astonishment at his return seemed somewhat rehearsed, especially considering his return was a formally announced event. A spark of doubt kindled within Prince Arel as he observed a mismatch between her facial expressions and actions, sensing an unspoken tension that began to unsettle him. Intent on uncovering the underlying truth, Prince Arel cautiously ventured further, asking her about her well-being as well as Prince Giles. He caught a glimpse of a momentary flash of irritation on the Queen's face, although she was quick to conceal it, maneuvering the conversation skillfully towards discussing the developments in Thalia. Despite her efforts to maintain a facade of tranquility, Prince Arel couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was off, his instincts prompting him to navigate this seemingly peaceful reunion with utmost caution. As Prince Arel nonchalantly mentioned the prevailing joy among his people, largely due to the revolutionary paper products he had initiated, he sensed a conspicuous shift in the room's energy. The atmosphere became tense, and he noticed that his remarks had notably annoyed the Queen. As the discussion unfolded, she ominously referenced swirling rumors concerning the paper products, thereby escalating Prince Arel's caution and intrigue. The conversation concluded rather suddenly, with the Queen taking her leave.
Still, take care of yourself.
Her parting words laced with a seemingly artificial undertone of worry for Prince Arel's safety. Once the Queen had left their presence, Lady Livana didn't hesitate to comment on the noticeable shift in the Queen's attitude. Prince Arel chose to dismiss it, suggesting that perhaps she was simply having an off day. Yet, amidst the blossoms and serene waters of the palace gardens, Prince Arel couldn't deny the storm that was gathering. The unsettling interaction with the Queen seemed to align all too well with the dark whispers and troubling occurrences that seemed to be emerging from the corners of the kingdom. Within him, a silent vow took form, firming up his resolve to stand guard, ready to face what seemed like an inevitable confrontation that loomed on the horizon. The air buzzed with the energy of the activating magic, setting the stage for their departure. As the visit to the royal palace drew to a close, Prince Arel and Princess Cania arrived back at the teleport circle, with Lady Livana and China sending them off. Prince Arel was worried about the meeting between Princess Cania and her mother. Prince Arel couldn't resist questioning the outcome of Princess Cania's meeting with her mother. She responded casually and assured him that everything was resolved, even going as far as to playfully slap him on the back, leaving Prince Arel with a slight injury. As the magic teleport circle was finishing, Prince Arel and Princess Cania said their heartfelt goodbyes to their family. In the days following their return to Thalia, Prince Arel found himself grappling with a new situation. Anxiety enveloped him as he contemplated the necessity of recruiting mages for his estate. Several compelling reasons urged him in this direction. One was the management of the teleportation magic circle, then the convenience it would bring to his role as a lord, and their ability to accelerate crop growth. A skill needed considering the significant deforestation occurring due to paper production, as well as a role in fortifying the estate's defense against potential attacks. And the list goes on for our lazy lord. As he thought about it, the significance of having mages on hand became increasingly clear. Financial constraints were not a problem for Prince Arel, so hiring them would not pose a problem. Moreover, considering the recent raid on the factory by mercenaries, the addition of mages would potentially heighten the security and defenses in the town. The prince couldn't shake off the nagging thought of how the outcome might have differed had mages orchestrated the attack. Despite the formidable prowess of his knights in confrontations, Prince Arel couldn't ignore the potential advantages of harboring a team of stealthy mages capable of launching unseen attacks. Thinking about the complexities of his current situation, Prince Arel recognized that acquiring the assistance of mages was more than a convenience. It was a vital tactical move. Armed with this insight, he set forth a recruitment notice, aiming to attract skilled and seasoned wizards to establish residence and dedicate their service to him. As the ink settled and the royal seal adorned the parchment, Prince Arel's aspiration of forging a fortified and prosperous Follia felt increasingly tangible. Moreover, Prince Arel thought about the implications of seeking aid from the magic tower, acknowledging the steep costs and substantial resources that it would require. He was cautious of the extensive influence the tower wielded, which he thought would prove annoying to navigate. Therefore, Prince Arel figured that the individuals who responded to his call would be those independent of the magic tower's grasp. Almost immediately after the notice was posted on the public boards, whispers and lively conversations began to reverberate among the people. The combination of Prince Arel's esteemed reputation and the appealing benefits described in the recruitment notice attracted a substantial gathering. Interest surged, reaching even the farthest corners of the territory, and sparked hope and curiosity among numerous budding mages. In the midst of this, a sudden disturbance near the board drew a woman's attention. She stumbled while approaching the crowd, yet they were too preoccupied to notice her fall. Quickly shaking off the dirt, she regained her balance and began moving through the crowd with both apologetic murmurs and resolute steps, her gaze firmly fixed on the enticing opportunity presented on the board. The bystanders threw curious, strange glances her way, silently labeling her an eccentric figure. Little did they know, this was merely the commencement of her adventurous journey. The flourishing era change passed by the corridors of Prince Arel's estate as towers of paperwork filled with eager applicants filled his desk. While the process of filtering and hiring had been difficult, the prince was determined in his decisions, ensuring that only the most promising and trustworthy individuals were hired. Prince Arel's primary concern lay in scrutinizing the backgrounds of each applicant, reluctant to entertain the notion of hiring someone who might potentially become an enemy. Even if it required a significant investment, Prince Arel was resolved to assess their trustworthiness now, rather than risk betrayal in the future. After a meticulous screening process, the time came for the interviews. Just as in the night selection process, each candidate was questioned about their motivation to join. Prince Arel found this phase slightly more tedious, yet necessary, and as the candidates stood aligned, Prince Arel personally selected a standout group of 12 mages, each demonstrating a distinct promise and ability. As individuals handpicked by him, he urged them to undertake their roles with unparalleled dignity and pride. Gratitude filled the hearts of the newly appointed mages, who were eager to serve under Prince Arel's wise leadership. On average, the mages' skills were at the third-class level, and the prince had picked all the good ones after taking their age and background into consideration. In a commanding tone, Prince Arel described his plans for the future. He fervently spoke of entrusting the mages with critical missions, pledging to invest in the honing of their abilities. A multitude of responsibilities awaited them. As the prince laid out his visions, he inquired about the presence of any fourth-class mages, and among the group, two figures, Mukoi Blob and Diareki, stepped forward, acknowledging their respective standings. Prince Arel found himself mesmerized by Mukoi Blob's appearance. Although he usually prided himself on valuing skill over appearances, he couldn't resist being drawn towards Diareki almost immediately. Share your thoughts below. Would you prefer Mukoi Blob or Diareki as your personal mage? The fact of the matter was that Prince Arel seemed to be masking his true motivations. The underlying reason for his favor towards Diareki over Munkoi Blob stemmed from an earlier encounter. As Prince Arel initiated the subsequent interview, Dia promptly volunteered. Recognizing her potent skill set, Prince Arel acknowledged that she could thrive in any environment. He then inquired about her peculiar choice to work in the frosty terrains of Falia. Pause. Initially caught off guard, Dia's face was filled with confusion before she earnestly expressed her desire to serve Prince Arel. This admission caught everyone in the room off guard, especially the prince, causing him to drop the documents he was holding. As the prince tried to decipher the genuineness of Dia's intentions using his abilities, he found himself posing another question and asking if she had applied just to work with him. Dia offered a simple nod in response, and at that moment, Prince Arel discerned no malice or deceit in her attitude. Instead, he saw only a deep-seated resolve and sincerity radiating from Dia, leaving a good impression on him. Thus, Dia earned the coveted position of Prince Arel's exclusive mage. Following the interview, Prince Arel explained the tasks and benefits associated with their roles. Leading the assembly of mages to a grand unveiling, he first decided to showcase the brighter aspects of their new environment. The atmosphere buzzed with astonishment and eagerness as the doors swung open to reveal a vast library, an apparent treasure trove of various genres of books. However, these were no ordinary volumes that lay before them. These were coveted grimoires, each bearing the seal of approval from the Magic Tower, a testament to their rarity and value. Not only were these tomes a financial luxury, but the acquisition of the certification from the Magic Tower was a feat in itself. Prince Arel harbored hopes that this sanctuary of knowledge would serve as a crucible for the mages to refine and elevate their craft. He was aware of their past, each having been expelled from the Magic Tower, a circumstance that made the ability to even touch these books a near impossible dream. However, this privilege came with a stipulation. In exchange, he required them to exhibit measurable progress and maintain a meticulous record of their research, fostering a cycle of growth and accountability. Unbeknownst to them, the library served a dual purpose. It was a reservoir where Prince Arel could delve deep into the world's magical systems, nourished by the fruits of their laborious research. Every stride in the mage's performance increased his power. As they treaded the snowy carpets of Falia's forest, Prince Arel explained the critical duties awaiting the mages. They were tasked with overseeing the management of the forest areas affected by logging. Once a sanctuary of lush trees, the forest now faced the expanding demands of the booming paper industry, resulting in a noticeable depletion of its natural resources. If this unchecked logging persisted, the forest risked becoming barren hills in due time. Recognizing this, Prince Arel took responsibility for this role and ensured a solution to fix this, as he pointed at a freshly planted saplings as a starting point for their magic. As the mages circled around the sapling, they dug their staves into the ground and started their incantations. Prince Arel, witnessing the sapling's miraculous transformation into a towering tree, gave him insight into the process. It was more complex than mere mana infusion. It demanded precise control and adept magical techniques to adjust the energy transfer. Though impressed, Prince Arel's ambition nudged him to ask about the possibility of further accelerating the growth. A veteran mage then stepped forward, curbing the prince's expectations with a dose of botanical wisdom. The mage explained that a sudden spurt in growth could potentially spell doom for the trees, as plants need periods of rest to flourish naturally. The mage assured that a steady, monthly growth pattern would create a rejuvenated forest in approximately 6 months, setting a realistic yet promising timeline for their future. Reflecting on memories from one of his past lives, Prince Arel recalled witnessing a world with environmental problems, and that the reality of living there would be too harsh for these mages to understand. Yet, as he stood amidst the mages, he liked their 6-month restoration plan and delegated this task to them with a sense of faith and anticipation. The next group of mages were tasked with maintaining the village fields. Prince Arel wanted them to foster agricultural self-sufficiency within the Falia community, moving beyond their current reliance on hunting. As a mage questioned the specifics of the task, primarily involving crop cultivation, Prince Arel confirmed it but extended the work further, wanting to expand the field to all 12 villages. This magnitude seemed to momentarily sap the energy of the group. However, Prince Arel was quick to lift their spirits, stressing that his objective wasn't to take over the villagers' role in crop cultivation, but to rehabilitate the fields, enabling the locals to cultivate crops themselves. To streamline this ambitious project, Prince Arel presented them with a blueprint that would guide their efforts. Following a brief discussion, the mages suggested harnessing magical tools to simplify the process, which Prince Arel had already brought, and encouraged them to initiate a trial run. As the arrangement of magical tools began, the strategy was clear. They needed a magical barrier that would shield the crops from Fahelia's elements, while still permitting the nurturing warmth and light of the sun to foster growth, thus creating a structure that allows them to regulate climatic conditions, such as temperature and humidity. Almost like a greenhouse, but this was called a manna house. Prince Arel was delighted by this approach and pictured replicating this system across other villages, thereby securing a steady food supply for the village. After that, he distributed responsibilities amongst the mages, tasking two with spearheading the research department of magical tools, while the trio were in charge of guarding the castle and territory. As for Daya, her role would be all-round, switching between safeguarding the prince and doing various errands at his request. In Prince Arel's eyes, Daya was a special magic shuttle that enabled him to wield magic beyond his usual means. He even requested Daya to hone her skills further, an order that she vowed to rise to the occasion without falter. Suddenly, a book slipped from Daya's pockets, falling to the ground. Prince Arel picked it up, and he recognized this book. Anyone can become a knight, intermediate-level book. The book, filled with complex theories surrounding aura, was a puzzle to many, as it had previously found little favor amongst the knights because they struggled to grasp its complex concepts. Prince Arel was intrigued, as he wondered about the connection between Daya and the book that was meant for knights. Asking about where she got the book, Daya explained how it was a lucky find from an acquaintance. But the content within had deeply resonated with her, unearthing striking similarities between the knight's utilization of aura and how mages recover their mana. In Daya's eyes, the book was nothing short of a masterpiece, a sentiment that grew into unwavering loyalty towards its author, Prince Arel. Daya even confessed her readiness to travel the continent if necessary, all to serve the prince, who had enlightened her through his book. Plus, Daya admitted that the culinary delights of Falia had also played a significant role in drawing her to this place, offering a whimsical yet genuine response for her allegiance. As Prince Arel absorbed Daya's passionate words, and the unusual yet heartfelt words of her loyalty, he had hoped that he'd choose the right person for the job. Because entrusting Daya with a critical role at his side marked a decisive step, one filled with faith in her abilities and commitment. Amidst the budding projects and the vibrant energy of the new employees within the castle walls, Prince Arel hoped that everything would be fine. Immersed with books all around him, Prince Arel experienced a revelation. He understood how magic was structured in this world. To test his theory, he recalled a memory when Daya summoned an orb in her hands. As he started the image training, a small wisp of mana started to ooze out of his fingertips, when all of a sudden surge of mana started flowing around Prince Arel, and as he opened his eyes, he noticed that he was able to control mana freely. Surprised by this outcome, Prince Arel wanted to change his self-proclaimed title as Pro in the past life to a Magic Pro now instead. As Prince Arel continued his magic training, a nudge of responsibility signaled him to resume his duties as the Lord of Thalia. The first item on his agenda was to venture to the bustling capital of Arnesia, escorted by his loyal guard, Asha. The main goal of their journey was to visit Aiken at the Iron Factory, a haven for dwarven blacksmiths. However, the atmosphere soured for Asha as she fumed at the sight before her. In her eyes, the smithy was a place of disorder and disrespect. Recalling back to when the dwarves had little to no respect for Prince Arel. As she turned towards Prince Arel, she vowed to reduce the establishment to rubble should they witness even a sliver of disrespect from the dwarves once more. In response, Prince Arel cautioned Asha against rash actions, emphasizing the nature of their visit was for work and to avoid any unnecessary incidents. As they stepped through the doorway, the surroundings seemed to change. Warm steam billowed around them, enveloping the area in a thick mist that momentarily disoriented Prince Arel. The unexpected surge of heat left him feeling parched and uneasy, with a nagging urge to retreat bubbling within him. But out of the veil of steam emerged a figure, a young man with weary but kind eyes. He introduced himself as Ben, a disciple who had devoted a staggering 15 years to apprenticeship under the renowned Master Aiken. Without hesitation, Ben navigated them through the heartbeat of the iron factory. Despite the grueling conditions, he wore his years of hard work proudly, a living testament to his unwavering dedication to Master Aiken's teachings. Prince Arel and Asha found themselves touched by Ben's persistent spirit, whose perseverance seemed both remarkable and exhausting. Their journey deeper into the factory eventually led them to a somewhat abrupt encounter with Aiken, the master blacksmith himself. An air of impatience enveloped him, as he remarked sharply about the excessive time it took for the prince to visit, despite having received his letter ages ago. Prince Arel, unbothered by the comment, replied with humor, calling Aiken impatient, and wondered if the master blacksmith expected him to drop everything and come running the instant the letter arrived, just as Aiken seemed to have done. As Aiken dismissed his remarks, he offered Prince Arel a customary cup of alcohol before they dove into discussions, and wondered what Prince Arel was planning to request this time around. Meanwhile, Prince Arel merely glanced at the glass, drawing a parallel between the informal serving of alcohol and the more traditional practice of serving tea during business meetings in his mind. Prince Arel then conveyed that the nature of his visit was different this time. He was extending an invitation to the blacksmiths, urging half of them to enter into an exclusive contract with him. However, Aiken denied this, suggesting that perhaps Prince Arel was already intoxicated to suggest such an agreement. Prince Arel attempted to clarify, mapping out his grand vision where Aiken would lead a new branch in Thalia, a venture that would be exclusively staffed and fully funded in terms of resources and expenses. However, Aiken's temper flared up at this proposal. The mere suggestion of setting up a branch in the cold, unforgiving landscape of Thalia seemed crazy to him, and assured Prince Arel that money held no allure for him. Since money wouldn't sway Aiken, Prince Arel swiftly explained that this proposal was not just about signing an exclusive contract. It also provided a golden opportunity for Aiken to learn about Damascus steel, a technology that Prince Arel had spent a considerable amount of time and resources uncovering. Upon hearing this revelation, Aiken seemed taken aback. Suspicion flickered in his eyes, as he swiftly directed an accusatory gaze toward Damon, suspecting him to be the mole who had leaked this highly classified information. Just a few weeks earlier, Damon shared the tales of the dwarves venturing into the kingdom of Arnesia, with a pursuit of rare and unique metals that were absent in their native lands. They had settled in the capital, engrossed in diligent work and research, harboring hopes of one day mastering the craft of forging a particular elusive metal, Damascus steel. Taking a deep breath, Prince Arel reiterated his expertise in the creation of Damascus steel, adding a tempting proposition. Under the exclusive contract with Prince Arel, they would be the first to see all kinds of new technology. The prince could almost feel the shift in Aiken's tone. A spark of interest kindled at the mention of new technologies. He pressed on, painting a vivid picture of a collaboration where the knowledge he harbored met the unmatched skills of the dwarves, making the creation of Damascus steel as straightforward as unraveling a roll of toilet paper. Aiken hesitated, yet curiosity asked about the precise terms of the exclusive contract that Prince Arel was eagerly promoting. Prince Arel suggested a 10-year contract, a proposition that Akin immediately rejected but counteroffered a shorter 3-year term. Following a period of negotiations, they mutually agreed upon a reasonable middle ground of a 5-year contract. As they reached a conclusion, a sense of accomplishment washed over Prince Arel as an agreement was settled. Akin, however, requested a month's grace period to discuss this with his fellow dwarves. He couldn't conceal his satisfaction at having made a contract with the dwarves. With the negotiations going well, Prince Arel and Asha readied themselves to return to Thalia. Prince Arel considered using the fatigue from their journey as a valid excuse to enjoy some meaningful rest. The truth in the matter was that the prince had grown accustomed to sneaking moments of relaxation, but openly resting under a valid reason was a more pleasurable feeling. Meanwhile, back in Thalia, Princess Kania found herself consumed by growing worries and doubts. Staring thoughtfully out the window, she couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling concerning Prince Arel's noticeable absence since their return. As Princess Kania asked Asha and Sena the whereabouts of Prince Arel, both of them denied any sightings of him venturing out of his room since his return from the capital. An air of determination enveloped her as she resolved to personally investigate the prince's prolonged retreat for more than a week. With a heart teeming with concern and disbelief, Princess Kania swung open his door, only to be greeted by a scene that was absolutely ridiculous. There lay Prince Arel, sprawled in leisure while being tended to by magical means. Princess Kania was left momentarily stunned as he casually asked her to join, coupled with a request for Dia to assist him in getting dressed via magic. Princess Kania found herself involuntarily caught up in the whimsical atmosphere, her body floating gently to a seated position at the dining table. Princess Kania couldn't overlook the blatant display of slothfulness that seemed to have engulfed Prince Arel. A troubling concoction of disappointment and unease brewed inside her, as she watched, almost in disbelief, as Prince Arel continued to spiral further into a state of laziness. But before he could task Dia to assist him even with his bathroom needs, something in Princess Kania snapped. Unable to contain her rising frustration, she burst out, yelling at Prince Arel for his excessive indulgence and lack of self-control. An emergency meeting was called for Prince Arel as he sat with Dia dumbfounded about the situation. Princess Kania, Asha, and Sena prepared to confront the prince with a barrage of questions. Feigning ignorance, the prince wondered if the meeting had any severe issues. Whispers ensued between Sena, Asha, and Princess Kania that Prince Arel seemed unaware of the gravity of the situation. Despite his apparent lack of understanding, Prince Arel asked Dia if she had an answer, but she had none to offer. Unfazed, Prince Arel couldn't comprehend the reason behind this sudden meeting. Suddenly, a resonating thud echoed in the room as Princess Kania brought her hand down hard on the table, her face filled with deep concern. She worriedly pointed out Prince Arel's overdependence on magical assistance. A look of genuine confusion crossed the prince's face as he asked if Dia's services were somehow lacking. He noted that she consistently approached her work with seriousness and executed her tasks with precision. Princess Kania clarified that her discontentment wasn't directed at Dia's work ethic, but rather at Prince Arel's escalating laziness, wondering when was the last time he walked himself. Prince Arel shamelessly protested that he still walked to the bathroom by himself, a statement that ironically emphasized the exact issue Princess Kania was pointing out. Both Sena and Asha sided with the princess, mutually concerned that Prince Arel's reliance on magic had grown too extreme. Yet, despite their obvious dissatisfaction, the prince stood firm, insisting he was simply enjoying the ease that magic introduced to his life, a stance Dia supported. Except the trio could hardly contain their frustration, as Prince Arel stubbornly seemed to overlook the gravity of his excessive indulgence. The conversation took a deeper turn when Asha questioned Dia's willingness to assist Prince Arel even in the most personal of tasks, without any reservations. Asha pointed out that although her actions might seem harmless within the confines of the castle, they could potentially foster judgment among the other residents if it was outside. Prince Arel, intrigued at the suggestion, made the trio stunned, fearing that they might have inadvertently planted an idea in his mind. However, Prince Arel quickly dismissed it as a joke, yet the atmosphere had tensed. The light-hearted comment failed to alleviate the escalating concerns in their expressions. At her wit's end, Princess Kania imposed a temporary ban on Prince Arel's use of magic. Furthermore, she sternly instructed Dia to refrain from indulging the prince's whims, catching her off guard. Misunderstanding the situation, Dia assumed that she was fired. Princess Kania, flustered, attempted to correct the misunderstanding, insisting that Dia was not being fired. Meanwhile, Prince Arel started to question the moral implications of his lifestyle. He admitted to himself that his dependency on magic had spiraled well beyond its original intention of fetching unreachable items. Now, it served as a tool to satisfy his ever-growing appetite for leisure and personal indulgence. A growing sense of guilt pricked at him as he reflected on his escalating laziness, fearing that his lack of physical activity might portray him as disabled in front of people. However, just as Princess Kania was prepared to scold her brother, Dia intervened, explaining that her magical aid wasn't entirely harmful, revealing that her spells incorporated muscle stimulation to prevent the prince from experiencing physical deterioration. Regardless, Princess Kania suggested changing Dia's responsibilities to curb the unhealthy pampering Prince Arel received. Dia interrupted suddenly and firmly rejected the idea of leaving Prince Arel's side. Expressing her pride and position as a mage, she couldn't have anyone else taking this job. Taken aback by Dia's objection, Prince Arel and Princess Kania found themselves momentarily stunned, with Prince Arel speculating that Princess Kania might have injured Dia's pride as a mage. Asha stepped in to ease the tension and asked why Dia was so determined to remain as Prince Arel's exclusive mage. As everyone's focus shifted to Dia, Prince Arel began contemplating the potential benefits of a transfer. In his mind, it wouldn't impact her salary, but rather liberate her from the constant demands of catering to his every whim. Just then, Prince Arel realized that the choice to keep Dia as his exclusive mage rested with him. However, his voice fell on deaf ears as Princess Kania continued to firmly negotiate with Dia, stating that she would need to be convinced to keep her job. Unflinchingly, Dia embraced the challenge, consenting to undertake a trial that would prove her worth. Prince Arel, feeling somewhat sidelined, wondered what the nature of these tests were about. In the first test, Princess Kania handed Dia a towering stack of documents, suggesting that to complement the intellectually skilled prince, Dia needed to showcase a parallel level of expertise. Undeterred, Dia embraced the task with grace and a hint of flair. Utilizing her magic, she managed to efficiently and effortlessly work through the stack, leaving Princess Kania flabbergasted. Prince Arel chimed in, indicating that Dia had already proven her capabilities many times over, given that she had been managing his share of paperwork. After all, the principle of magic was the application of intellect, a field where Dia excelled, nullifying any doubts regarding her failing the initial test set by Princess Kania. Next, Princess Kania ushered them into the palace kitchen. She pointed out that Prince Arel was picky about his food, hence the importance of Dia being adept at satisfying his culinary preferences. Dressed fittingly for the occasion, Dia eagerly stepped up to demonstrate her culinary skills. Harnessing her magical abilities, she deftly sliced, whisked, and concocted a feast that could tantalize the taste buds of the royal lineage. Princess Kania couldn't shake off her nervousness about tasting the culinary creations laid before her. Nevertheless, Prince Arel and her were soon overtaken by the exquisite taste and craftsmanship of Dia's dishes. Prince Arel even remarked that the meal seemed specifically tailored to his tastes, a sensation further heightened when Dia presented a meticulously crafted dessert. As the preparations for the next test were underway, Prince Arel found himself feeling that Princess Kania's sudden interest in testing Dia concealed an ulterior motive. Consumed by this suspicion, he stepped out and asked Sena and Asha about this situation. Soon enough, he uncovered that Princess Kania harbored suspicions towards Dia stemming from an incident that occurred just a few days ago. In this unsettling event, A security system crafted from magical tools had been found partially compromised, and the perpetrator remained at large. While no concrete evidence linking Dia, the appearance of a mysterious letter that was left behind urging Dia to return to the magic tower cast a web of shadow over her. The cryptic letter and the curious circumstances surrounding it seemed like fragments of a larger, troubling puzzle, potentially unveiling the depth of Dia's relationship with the magic tower and perhaps revealing the true nature of her loyalty to the prince. Prince Arel wondered if Dia was shown the letter as Asha, and Sena confirmed she did. However, they noted that not a trace of agitation was on her expression, and she didn't even say anything about the letter. Unfortunately, Dia's unwavering loyalty now cast her in a suspicious light because of her excessive pampering of Prince Arel. Trying to ease the tension, he joked that it must be due to his irresistible charm, a remark that Asha and Sena did not appreciate. Deep inside, Prince Arel harbored a secret. He already perceived the true nature of Dia through his special ability, and was well aware of her genuine affection and unwavering loyalty towards him. However, sharing this information was not an option. Prince Arel had no way of explaining this to either Princess Kania or his knights. Prince Arel was haunted by the memory of the Dark Mage's attack on Princess Kania, an event that had left an unforgettable mark, fostering a lingering discomfort around mages. This recollection casts a new light on Princess Kania's current actions, allowing him to empathize with her fears. Before jumping to conclusions, he asked Sena and Asha to grant him some time, and to stop Princess Kania from her unnecessary tests, while he looked into Dia's problems instead. Now, Prince Arel found himself at the helm of an investigation that not only sought to protect Dia's honor, but also aimed to preserve the unity and trust that bound them all. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed it, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'll be working on some one-shots for Halloween, and then I'll get back to finding the next manhwa to work on. Until then, thanks for everything, and I hope you all have enjoyed it as much as I have.